welcome. Sunday night here in the UK, and other time zones are allowed. Welcome. We're going to be having a hell of a good debate tonight. You may have seen it advertised. Let me just remind you where we're going to go. In the first hour or so, we will be debating, does the role of showrunner or producer serve Doctor Who best? There's excesses out there. There's mistakes made. There's some brilliant maneuvers and decisions and creations made by many of them. We're going to try and kind of ruminate and stir the pot and all of that and try and come up with a decision. Please join in. What do you actually think out there? Is it better in this new iteration of Doctor Who that we have a showrunner, or is it a producer? Now, I'll define it in a minute just to kind of help the debate. But then in the second half of our discussion, after that, we'll be straight into the big news. And there's quite a lot of it about. Take your pick there. So in the second hour, Millie Gibson, Varada Sethu. Oh, my God, Millie Gibson's not sacked. She's back. What's going on there? We'll try and get to the bottom of that. Birthday boy Peter Davison confessing confusion about the BIGENERATION. Some very interesting thoughts we can have about that. Jinks Monsoon keeps changing their blooming name, but they are now known as the Maestro. And who the hell's the Maestro? How does that fit in? And that fits in with our next news item, which is what's our latest season predictions? You've got some of them there. I'm not teasing anybody. I don't play with you on this show. If you want to stay with us, thank you very much. But basically, we'll be discussing, is the 14th Doctor the Valiard, Sutek, the big boss at the end of the series, Ruby Sunday, a Time Lord, and of course, Russell Davies trying to explain his plot device with the Devil's Chord because of the Beatles copyright. So there's quite a lot to get into. I'm talking fast because I need to really be joined by my panelists and my friends. So let's get rooting through. I'll say hi to you all. So basically, I will say hello, Timescales.
Good morning.
Good to see you. Yes, it's your morning. We're all knackered here. So, and let's have a look. Here's Jeremy as well. Let's have a look. Look at that.
Jeremy.
What's that? A day in the life of a producer. Which one was that one?
John Nathan Turner.
John Nathan Turner. I'm sure he's going to get a mention tonight. And of course, hello, Cinnamon.
Hello. How are you all?
See, we can't have Cinnamon without a time lag. He's in a different time zone. He's in East Space. I'm going to start calling him Madrick. And then hello, Hugh.
Hi, Hugh.
Evening, everyone. Morning to those. It's morning.
Hugh is definitely in a different time zone. It's called Scotland. And then we've got Rachel. Hiya, Rachel.
Hello, hi everyone.
Hello. It doesn't feel like 2 minutes since I last spoke to you.
No, it doesn't, does it?
And of course, there's Brandon, who I was also talking to yesterday.
Hey, what's up, guys?
Hello.
I advertised this is a big show. I said this is the one where Cinnamon Toast Crunch discovers milk. So this is going to be a big one, guys.
Well, that's very true. So, I mean, we've got a lot to discuss tonight, haven't we? I mean, yes, my gosh, where do we start? So, I think it's important to set this up that we set a few things in place here. So, of course, we're trying to grow as a channel. We really want to entertain you. We are passionate about Doctor Who, and that is our foremost thought all the time. And of course, we only grow as a channel if you subscribe. Please check you have subscribed. There's the Sisters of Plenitude. Now, I always have a deal with our Sensphere followers. If you subscribe, believe it or not, I'm like a bit of a Del boy galactically, Sabalong Glitz, I suppose. But basically what I'm saying is I can turn those subscriptions into galactic credits. And you may not have heard, because some of us fans, we're fickle, we move on. Since New Earth, yeah, I mean, the Sisters of Plenitude, they don't have plenty anymore. In fact, the Sisters of Plenitude are on strike. They need more money. That we need to upgrade their pay and working conditions. So while it was lockdown and we were banning our pans and stuff outside of our doors, did we do it for the Sisters of Plenitude? Did we not? And so we need to help them out and get them all kind of sorted out. Get them a new hospital, get them a new ward. So please, if you haven't subscribed, it's not for me. How dare I just beg for me? This is for the Sisters of Plenitude. Of course it is. So please, one little click, one little notification, and the Sisters of Plenitude will get more money. Big deal there. There you go. Right. And on top of that, let me just say, let's set up our debate properly on showrunners and producers. I'm just checking our thread. Are we getting opinions? Bring them in. Tell us where you stand. Who are the top people? Who are the ones we wished hadn't been in charge of Doctor Who? What were the best moments, best decisions we could make? And just to set the tone of the debate and make sure we do everything properly, I need to go quickly to my Sunday sermon. Yes, very important. Our timescales is panicking, thinking, am I doing the sermon today? Right, 1 week in, mate, I tell you. So we're all here about Doctor Who because of our passion for Doctor Who. Doctor Who is escapism for many of us. Now, this week, some Doctor Who streams went heavy on a serious report on NHS provision for trans children and its efficacy in the UK. We wondered if we could mention it. Well, actually, I have to say the sense for you. We read all 388 pages, and from that realised it only had a tangential link to Doctor Who, if you stretch the point, and missed the point of the report itself. And Hilary Cass, who wrote the report, has stated that children are being used as a political football already. We will not therefore do that. We will judge the showrunners and producers in our debate on their triumphs, their mistakes, their excesses, and possibly where they overstretched their remit. As Doctor Who fans, we will passionately debate that, for that is what we are here for. For those who want the news, there are very good 24-hour streaming platforms already out there. This is our Doctor Who space. Okay? So that's what you're getting tonight, nothing else. Okay? Now, before I ask you all your first opinions and bring in everybody, yes, well, I'm glad you recognise this, Michael Q, Brother Brendan. There has been an argument in our house that every week I should dress up as a vicar for a moment, but there's two changes that can go on. But a bit like Dick Henry for the older ones. Dick Henry, remember that vicar with the teeth?
Oh, you are awful.
Yeah.
But I like you.
So,
My
Brandon
head,
keeps
I've
me
got a
right.
clue what you're talking about.
Brandon keeps me right. We can't have a debate about showrunners versus producers in Doctor Who without just kind of clarifying a few things. So let's get this all out the way. So it might just help because we've got American viewers, Australian viewers, we've got British viewers who might not have been watching Doctor Who when we had producers. There we go. So I quickly looked at a few things. So you can see the present showrunner setup. They're established writers. They are one of the top executive producers. They outrank everybody else creatively. They have control of all the production. They're responsible for all aspects of it. They are the boss. When you had people like Verity Lambert, they were part of a departmental hierarchy. The BBC One controller was in charge of them. The head of drama was in charge of them. But yes, they had an eye on budget, casting, writer selection, various things. But they were part of a school of producers at the BBC. Okay, so it was a very different setup. And so it's very interesting when you actually look at what we're going to be talking about tonight, that you're comparing different beasts, really. So let's get started off. Let's freshen this up. There's been too much talk from me, and we'll soon get going. So, Hugh, I'll come to you because this is like Celebrity Squares, and you're right in the middle. And you're the strategic square. So basically, what I'll say to you is, right, just a nice, concise one to start us off and get the thread all tasty on this one. What I find is you look at the first Doctor Who producer, Verity Lambert, and you look at our latest showrunner and you compare the two, and who are you happiest with what they've been doing and have done?
Right. So, I mean, I think it's difficult to underestimate the impact that Verity Lambert had, being brought in by Sidney Newman specifically to do Doctor Who, being the youngest producer, I think, at the BBC, as well as the I think the only woman at that stage, and to come out and do what was for Doctor Who something deeply significant. The other thing in terms of that, though, is at the time you didn't just have writers; you had a script editor. The first one, I think, is David Whittaker, which is enormously important as well. Yeah. And now you have this idea of showrunner. My take is that showrunners come from a background generally of coming up with the idea themselves and it being their universe. So there's tons of stuff like The Wire and Sopranos, but if you want to look at something in terms of sci-fi, you look possibly at Babylon 5 with Michael Straczynski. That, I think, has a lot of sense. I think whenever Doctor Who came back, having a showrunner, which was a much more sort of like, it was much trendier and something that was much more on trend at the time. I think possibly having Russell Davies as a showrunner then made sense. I'm not sure it made sense going forward. I think to re-establish Doctor Who needed something, but I think it works better as a committee, and I think it's reducing the number of writers who work on Doctor Who. And the great thing about Doctor Who is the openness to new writers.
Well, let's think about this then, everybody, and please come in when you can. I won't go round the houses in the usual way. There's too many of us, and some of them you may be more hot to trot. So please just butt in. And with Cinnamon, because of the time lag, if I wave, that's the kind of, if you can bring it together and we'll move on type thing. I'll try and do that. So
well, I've just checked my microphone now, so maybe that's a little bit better.
That sounds a bit faster, yeah. So the question is, Verity Lambert launched Doctor Who and was very much part of its creation, and Russell Davies relaunched Doctor Who and is very much part of recreating it now. What's your preference, Rachel?
Oh, Verity or Russell? Probably Verity. I tend to prefer a producer over a showrunner as well, because what a producer allows for, a producer like Verity, is obviously, as Hugh said, like bringing in the different writers. There is more scope for imagination, more scope for building upon different aspects of the story that perhaps Verity might not have actually thought of. Whereas with Russell T Davies, he's very good. I'm not going to say that he's not very good. He brought it back with a bang with one of the scariest aliens that I could actually see on the screen ever. But he's more limited as a showrunner, because what he says goes, essentially. And whilst he may be open to ideas, he doesn't have to take them on board if he doesn't want to. So I think Verity is definitely the better one for me.
So, I mean, and I'm not going to keep repeating the question. Don't worry, panelists, and just come in. But basically, I'm saying this in a nutshell. We will look into the minutiae of producers versus showrunners, and those in the thread. We will look at various periods of Doctor Who. Don't worry. But this is just to kind of start us off. It's quite a tasty question when you look at producer versus showrunner, to look at the latest person versus the very first one. Does anyone want to come on that with a kind of highlight where they would go with this conversation? Go on, Cinnamon.
Well, it's a very good question. I was quite surprised actually when I did see the thumbnail for this stream, because it's a very good topic. Really, it's a little bit different from one that I think we've done. It's quite a subjective one, and to be fair, I would say the simple answer, I think, right or wrong, is pros and cons to both. So whether you're personally in the camp of producer, there'll be many that are for that, and there'll be cons against that. And again, same way for a showrunner, there'll be some pros and cons for that. Again, I would say I'm somewhat slightly biased, because I've only ever watched the show and known the show under a showrunner. Grew up under the Verity Lambert or Philip Hinchcliffe, Barry Letts, John Nathan Turner, and it's also, you've got to also think about it in the time that TV was made. 60s, 70s, 80s, television was just a different beast, to what we're getting now. I mean, when we talk about Americanizations in Doctor Who, look, all this, this is, I guess, one of them. The showrunner, I think, is a more American concept. It was a sort of recent thing. We got it in 2005, and it worked for its benefit. Again, I was saying before about Doctor Who coming back in 2005 with a bang, and this was one of those changes. So, it depends. It's a very individual thing.
Cinnamon,
It depends on how you look at it.
what would you say to Bobby D's 75 here? I agree with what Time Scales has said. The showrunner shouldn't be writing most of the stories. The Tamura people, which goes way back, did that with the creator of the show and began to run out of ideas. RTD, after his first thing, said he was running out of ideas. Stephen Moffat was exhausted. He was also doing Sherlock, I appreciate.
So was I.
Chris Chibnall, I think Chris Chibnall had too many ideas in one respect. I didn't want to go. But I mean, what would you say? Because obviously the producer in the old days, whether it was Verity Lambert, whether it was John Wiles, Barry Letts, whoever, they weren't really writing them. I know Barry Letts and a couple have had their fingers on the pie a bit, but they had the kind of, you know, overview of everything and casting, whereas a showrunner has a bit more power. So, but that means they're exhausted. It just means they're exhausted.
Yeah, and just to put it, I won't get too bogged down into it, but to put it in football terms, you know, along previously, one manager would have a little bit more control over everything, whereas nowadays they're more defined in just a coaching role, and they'll have other people who take care of all the other side of the business. Whereas it's a little bit like this, you know, at one point, you know, it used to be like that, where it would be someone who would look after the face. It's sort of like a manager, looked after the general view of the show. And then you'd have the person who's actually writing the scripts, and then you'd have someone else who's obviously in the production team. Whereas it's the opposite of that has now happened. Now it's someone taking control of a lot more, someone who's got a lot more say, the big boss at the top of the thing, who's, you know, in charge of everything. Yeah, you're pointing at the comment there. The major difference to me is that producer.
Yeah, JWC reviews. The major difference to me is a bit like what you were saying, is that a producer is a bit like a project manager, overseeing but not inputting. I mean, they'll choose maybe the doctor, and we can talk about some of those examples later. They might change the tone of the show, blah, blah, blah. A showrunner is too close to the project, e.g. RTD. And RTD is going to come up, I think, a fair bit, especially in relation to maybe things recently. I will just shout out, just so we don't look as though we're going to be general for too long to our thread. But an example would that be Verity Lambert would fight her corner, and had to fight her corner, and Verity Lambert would have had major input into how certain things were created. But she had a line manager. Well, she had quite a few line managers, and she didn't win every battle. The famous one is she won the battle about the Daleks and the bug-eyed monsters, and Sidney Newman said, "You know the show, I'll back off." But that was you know, she had to fight her corner. Whereas RTD, a few fans, or maybe are concerned that if he has an opinion, or he has a message, or he wants to push the show in a certain direction, who puts the brakes on him? And unlike the old days, it will be the head of Channel 1, BBC One, it will be the head of drama. Now it should be Jane Tranter and that team of Julie Gardner. But when me and Hugh were doing our show ages ago on the Russell Davies documentary, they all were basically blowing air in certain places. And sorry, they just think he's amazing. So, you know, Brandon, you're listening patiently over there. I mean, what's your preference?
I think maybe they need to restructure the way they're doing it. Like, I don't know. What do you like the decision making? Yeah, it's always great to have like one person, one final say to yay or nay things, but maybe they need the actual people like who are creating the show to not just be one guy who's also the writer, the producer. I just think they need to fracture the hats that one guy's wearing. You know, so it's a lot like what Scales is always saying about like the showrunner thing. Just kind of, it's like I said last week. It's a king. A monarchy's great when you've got a good king, but when a bad one comes along, you want democracy all of a sudden. You know what I'm saying? So if he was doing things right and we were all down, it works great. But the way they've got their whole system structured now, when it's not working for a lot of us, it's just they need to maybe make some changes. I just don't know what those changes would be. Guys, shout out to John Yolden. He was sick. Just want to let him know we're thinking about him, man. He's watching.
He's in the chat.
He's in the chat.
And also hi to Kersey in the chat. Brendan, if I can chime in here on this, I'm here for the education today, and I'm already learning a lot because as an American, I don't know what the difference is between the showrunner and the producer with British television. And you've explained it here, yes, but this is something I haven't really thought of until just the last couple of days here. So I am learning, and I appreciate the education on that. And to echo what Brandon just said, I don't want to keep repeating it over and over, but I think that whoever is running the show should run the show. And I think there are tremendous opportunities for other types of stories to be told by other writers. And I don't believe that the people running the show, whichever capacity, as the showrunner and or the executive director, should be writing most of the stories. So there, I said it again. So
they're not nurturing and cultivating new talent either. Like they're not bringing in the next Moffat, the next Mark Gatiss or something. They're not giving them a chance, it seems.
And they're not bringing back the old, really proven talent, like
True,
from
that
the
too.
novels and Big Finish and what have you.
I mean, it's a meaty discussion, and
I think as a general rule, there's nothing wrong with having multiple people. In fairness, I will say that regardless of what side you're on. I think, as a general point, there's nothing wrong with having more voices. That would be one of those pros that I was speaking about. It's something, when it's just you, when you're the big boss, like J&T, he was the boss, but he also probably couldn't write. He probably admit it himself. He's not a writer. He dabbled in acting. It wasn't for him. He was behind. He knew that his role was behind the camera. Again, it was different. Different roles work for different people.
The thing is, when you look at the
promoting
producer,
the actual brand of it.
When you look at the producer role in the past, I mean, all Doctor Who fans of different ages will see Barry Letts worked closely with Terrance Dicks. Philip Hinchcliffe worked closely with Robert Holmes. Now, it might be funny, but JNT and Eric Sayward and Christopher H. Bidmead, but they did discuss things. Yes, there was some falling out as well, but there tended to be a bit more of a pairing going on. Then Andrew Cartmel with JNT later on, when he came up with the master plan. I think the problem now, when I hear people's criticisms, is that the showrunners now, Chibnall, RTD, Moffat, whether they're getting tired or not doing too much, are not getting challenged, or when I say criticized, just challenged in that way to just check what they're doing and the logic of what they're doing. My famous example is Terrance Dicks and Barry Letts sitting down saying, do you know what? We need a Moriarty to Doctor Who. We need a new Moriarty character. And they invented the Master. Now that was a master stroke. Now, has RTD got anybody saying, by generation, I'm not too sure. That kind of thing. It's so. Please get into the.
Yeah, you don't need anyone to say, "Oh, you're wrong." It doesn't seem to be doing it. Just someone else just to concentrate your mind a bit more. Just someone to share those ideas, bounce because it helps you as a person. If you're not just living
it's
in
just
your
like
own
us
echo chamber, so to speak. I bounce ideas. It's like us. I bounce ideas. I'm not always 100% sure in my opinion. I have an opinion, but I'm not completely so I'll exchange it. I'll share it with you guys. What you think? You take a little bit back, give a little bit more. That's what this is about. It's a bit like this really. Whereas if I'm in my own little thing, I'm kind of again on my own. So again, as a writer, there's nothing wrong with bouncing ideas off, sharing things. Not having someone say change this, change that. That's silly. Just it's a simple collaboration of exchange of.
Well, let me be fair and then bring in Jeremy, and then I think everybody's at least said something, and then everybody can have a free-for-all about examples, mistakes, highlights. I've mentioned the Master, for example, invention. Verity Lambert defending and keeping the Daleks, which will have changed Doctor Who history, let's be frank. So everybody can have a free-for-all in a minute, but Jeremy, please come in. What's your, obviously we texted about this, but what's your philosophy? Share it with the viewers, please, on where you stand on showrunner versus producer.
I'd rather have a producer rather than a showrunner. And I think, as the points were made, but the fact was that I think the changes took place when J&T took over. And although he called himself the producer, he really was kind of a bit like a showrunner, overseeing quite a lot of the actual production, except for the first year when Barry Letts was the executive producer. So in the second year, then obviously he took over as the kind of the full producer, but was very much similar to Russell T Davies in the sense that he was a kind of showrunner, but the definition then wasn't widely known, so he was stuck with the label of producer. but I'd rather have a producer than a showrunner. I think the showrunner title, I think it overtakes the program a little bit, and the personality and the strength of the producer who's running it puts his stamp on the whole of the show in terms of all of the scripts and everything else. You've got to have a bit of diversity in terms of different writers to find out which writers stand out more than the others do. Otherwise we're not going to get another Robert Holmes or another Terence Dicks or Pip and Jane Baker or whatever.
It's interesting that in the past you had a producer with a strong lead writer, so to speak, like Robert Holmes, like Terence Dicks, like Eric Sayward. So in other words, you had that kind of overview producer knowing where the budget restraints are and what his boss is saying above, etc. And then you also had that more creative input between the two of them. J&T would say, I want a Trial of a Time Lord series, that sort of thing. He would set that kind of tone and direction, but the writers would do the work underneath. That's kind of my understanding of it in a way.
So, Brendan, there's a really interesting thing on this, which is that role, sort of like the Robert Holmes role, Douglas Adams, etc., is down previously as the script editor. And there are still script editors and have been script editors for New Who, and I couldn't name one of them.
Gary Russell is one of them, I think.
Could well be, but I mean they're not doing the role that was there previously.
No, it's a very different role. Now, Rachel, let's just so everybody can see that we're going to expand this now. So basically, Rachel, give us a couple of your mistakes or highlights of a producer versus a showrunner, just so we can get arguing with you or agreeing with you.
Well, here's the thing, right? I was just going to actually, my two penneth that I was going to put in.
Yes.
I've actually worked with producers and showrunners. So the level of control is completely different, and the feeling is different as well. A showrunner, as an actress working with a showrunner, it's everything is micromanaged, like down to the last detail, like push it out, and it's incredibly controlling. Whereas on another project that I've done, I've worked with producers. And yes, they're involved, and yes, they will make suggestions to be changed, but they rely on you as the performer to bring it to life and do a great job. And they will let you know if they don't like something. And it's the job of the director or the script writer to add to the show, so to speak, and then obviously producers will make changes where they see fit, but the difference in the level is quite something, which is actually I also think that's what affects my decision of I would rather work with a producer than a showrunner. So because I've experienced both. But to your original question, what was it?
What was that again?
Some examples. I mean, while you're doing that, I'm just going to explain. Michael Q, I don't know what he's trying to say here. Chat and Brendan, I'm better go now to another channel. I think there's no reason to go to another channel because I've seen what the other channel are saying. And after our really meaty debate, we're doing the news, all of it. It's all there. It's just a matter of whether you want to press a button or not. I have to say, I think we have the quality panels, so I wouldn't be moving at all.
Well put, Brendan. Can I ask Rachel something real quick, please?
Yeah.
Go on, because she's going to start
Rachel,
with examples. We've got to get into it.
With you working with both showrunners and producers, have they ever been the same, where one person was filling both roles, or are they usually different?
There's a significant difference. Yeah.
Okay.
So, like a producer would be here, there, and everywhere, whereas a show will be just more directly involved with what's going on.
Okay. Have you seen it to where one person is filling both roles?
Not to that extent.
So it's usually two different people.
Effectively, yeah.
Okay. Very good. Thank you.
So let's get into it, because obviously we are competitive. So in this debate, examples work, examples help, and actually makes it nice and graphic and visual to everybody. So Rachel, a pro and a con maybe with a showrunner or whatever. I know you've given me some examples.
Yeah, well, my main focus, I think, because this is the era I technically started out with, so it's the era that I know best. It was Jonathan Nathan Turner. Okay, and I've got written down here Adric Collins Coat, getting rid of the Sonic. The Sonic was getting rid of that was one of the best things ever. You know that I think it's one of the worst plot devices that has ever been invented in Doctor Who. So when it went, and I saw that, Colin Sylvester were not running around like zapping things and using the sonic screwdriver I'm using my pen, but to like fix things or whatever it is they were doing with the sonic screwdriver. I was like, yes. So we get some creative writing. Oh, Cinema's got his Sonic out there, but the con to losing the sonic screwdriver is the marketability to young people, except maybe Sonic sunglasses, but that's just another thing altogether.
Before Rachel, you come to the other pieces. I know which they are.
Yeah.
Don't worry. What I'll do is I'll bring the panel in here, because these are all good examples of. So we've got a producer who decides we're going to make it a bit more kind of challenging for the writers to be more creative. So we'll get rid of, in Visitation Part 3, that very tool up there. Well, a lot of us know now that since New Who came back, the showrunners have, I personally think, excessively used various models of sonic screwdrivers to the point now where I just think it's a Harry Potter magic wand. So is this an example of showrunners maybe thinking of the marketing, showrunners not being challenged? What do people think? Because this is a good example, because you've got a producer saying sonic screwdriver, no, and then you've got showrunners going, no, I need them used more. I don't know. What's
isn't it sort of like if you are doing lots of them, if you are doing lots, sorry, on you go.
This one. Thank you. I was just going to say that in the 60th, we've had this discussion for a long time, really, about how powerful and how convenient sonic screwdrivers were used, and it's always been it's always been one of those debates. But it seems like it's got even stronger, because again, even in the 60th, we saw David Tennant's Doctor was just creating sonics shields with this one and creating barriers like it was some sort of Marvel piece. So at one point it was just a plot device to quickly get out of a trap door or something. Whereas now, he's going all Avengers and all. It's all. It's stepped up a level, really, hasn't it?
Mm-hmm. So I think that that's happened because if you are doing lots of the writing and don't have time to do the plotting, then it becomes a much easier thing to go to.
Yeah, which is one of the reasons why I actually prefer it without the sonic. Like when they lost it in Wild Blue Yonder to repair the TARDIS, that was, Wild Blue Yonder sucked, but it was great.
You didn't like it?
No, I didn't like it, but
Rachel gets blunt every now and again. You won't see it coming, also bam.
I don't shout, but I can be blunt. But yeah, it just. But when it did go, I was pleased that it wasn't used in Wild Blue Yonder.
But you know what's happening, Rachel, is they get rid of the sonic screwdriver or they bring it back. They've got psychic paper as well now. They've got this other quick accessy thing. I'm a 70s Doctor Who fan, so to speak. That's where my formative years. And the Doctor would have to talk himself out of trouble every single time. I kind of like that bit of dialogue. Whereas now it's just psychic paper, bang. And I just think there's two. If you've got the sonic doing everything, psychic paper doing everything, it just means you can run into an explosion faster and it turns into a Hollywood movie and not Doctor Who.
Yeah.
Yep, exactly. Like something I noticed, Brendan, since I've started listening to Big Finish is like the ones with like the one I'm listening to right now called The Fearmonger with Sylvester McCoy. He just shows up places. You know, he doesn't have a sonic screwdriver or the paper, so he has to actually come up with some BS or lie to get himself out of trouble, because the doctor's forever being in places he's not supposed to be. So you're right, it does add a whole extra element of him having to be even more witty to explain himself if he doesn't have the paper.
Yeah. So I mean, Rachel's got some examples, and I'm going to try and stagger Rachel, because to be fair, to bring other people in. So the overall debate is which has served best, showrunner or producer. I think examples help, like the sonic screwdriver one, in where people have made mistakes, gone wrong, etc. As you know, on the top row there, has anyone got an example of a mistake, or somebody got an example of a great highlight where it proves the producer works better than the showrunner, or vice versa? As you're thinking, you know, I can't say that RTD is the only person who courts controversy, whether it's in the pronouns debate or something else, because quite frankly, JNT was very good at courting controversy by saying we might have a female doctor. Remember after Tom Baker, and then also saying I might unbreak the chameleon circuit. And so to get good PR, JNT would court controversy. Whereas I think, in my opinion, some of the showrunners now, they create controversy in the plot. So on the top row there, timescales, Jeremy, Cinnamon,
Okay.
any examples you'd like to bring in? Timescales?
I have one just really short I'll throw out. Regardless of it, if it's the job of the showrunner or the executive producer to provide some sort of a safety net to where you can avoid redundancy, such as redundancy in the same writer, something has failed, I believe, because there should be enough talent out there for there to be 8 episodes of Doctor Who with 8 different writers. And I don't believe that there has been a sufficient safety net where a creative team can raise that fact and have a little bit of control over that actually happening. So as far as showrunner versus the producer, the first time that I've ever thought of the fact that there probably could be some improvement in the management has been in New Who, and in particular, both RTD eras.
I mean, I'm going to bring in hello, Dan Type 40. Hello. I am honored
Hi,
to
Dan.
have you.
Welcome here.
I am honored to have you on our channel, and you're giving us some time and support. I fully appreciate it, because if we are going to be good at this, it's because we've watched you and let you. Your channel has grown so amazingly. I discovered you in lockdown. I thought you were amazing. So thank you. I'm touched that you've come. But your point is, have to be honest, as a child, I was never that sure what the Sonic was supposed to do either. I have to say, this is interesting, isn't it? When we had producers who came and went, I think the plot ruled, the story ruled. And actually, the producer didn't necessarily impose themselves on the actual Doctor Who program. I think with the showrunners, they really do ram themselves into it. And in the Sonics case, yeah, I think I agree, Dan. You know, it was either used or it wasn't. I didn't quite know when or what for what reason. But now it's a marketing ploy. It is just a blooming marketing ploy. It's a get out, because we don't want any long dialogue scenes. We just want to get to some more blooming action. It's Hollywood.
Yeah, I said it's a get out of jail free card. Sorry to cut you off.
No, well, no, I was coming to an end there anyway. Jeremy, am I on the right lines here? Have you got a good example of a misfire or a brilliant masterstroke from a producer or a showrunner to prove our points?
Well, a brilliant misfire is Russell T Davies, in the sense that he has political views. So he will go on stage and about those political views and have different views on other issues, which we won't go into on here. But that would never have been allowed by the BBC back then with an in-house producer, say like John Nathan Turner or Barry Letts or whatever. But with Russell T Davies, he's a little bit of a maverick in terms of his own personal agenda. And so I think that's a bit of a misfire, because once you start explaining your own political views, where you're leaning, whether you're voting for Labour or Conservative, you're going to start to alienate viewers that do not follow your political persuasion, particularly if you're, a producer. So it's better to stay neutral, and it's better to not really have a political view, I think, in this day and age, if you're a producer of a mainstream show. Most of the producers back then didn't have a political. They may have had a political view, but they didn't want to share it with anybody else, and kept it to themselves, and kept in the background. And that's the difference between the producers back then in the 60s and 70s, and the producer now at the moment, Russell T Davies.
And that's what I mean. We've all read that Barry Letts might have been a Buddhist and might have put it into Plans of the Spiders, little touches like that. But I didn't know where they really stood, only if I read biographies now. Whereas there's no doubt where a showrunner stands now politically, and they've said it at Attitude award ceremonies in various places. And then you look at the plot, and then you look at characters that are introduced, and then you start to read the story in a different way. And that's what disappoints me all the time about this, which is we know too much about where RTD especially stands. And then you read into certain characters and certain moments get people angry and irritated. And you just start to think, where are we going with this? I mean, I've got examples which I can show you. For example, RTD seems to be a real obsession at the moment. I know a lot of people are worried about so many things. Now, if I can, I'll bring it up in a moment. It's not quite there yet, but I'll bring it up in a moment. But the pronouns debate. But actually, his Davos Gate, what he said in Unleashed. What he says at various ceremonies, it is very concerning when you see it then transferred onto screen, because then you think, as you say, Jeremy, it is only one standpoint that we're ever going to get. There's no challenge to it. They all seem to be in an echo chamber of saying, in this case, Tories out, this, that. Whereas I never knew that. JNT was the closest to RTD in some ways, the big showman. But I didn't really know where the hell he was going with politics. Just didn't know.
Can I say something positive for Russell Davies as a showrunner? It goes back to his first stint, which is, I think, the choice to make it slightly more soapy in the sense of introducing family for the companion was a good decision in terms of making it feel more real to people that were watching it then. And I think we'd moved away from being able to just have people appearing from nowhere and then disappearing and having no connection anywhere. So I think sort of like, but that's not an agenda for the program that makes it difficult to write a story, because you can write any story and still have that. It's just something that makes the story slightly wider and slightly more complex for what you're doing.
Yeah, I mean, one of the examples I was going to obviously show, and I might as well get out there because we're not going to go into certain other things that have been out on the news, but what we will look at is what actually has been said by RTD. So here's an example of our showrunner, and I cannot think of Verity Lambert, John Wiles, Innes Lloyd. I could go on doing any sort of kind of discussion. Admittedly, they never had Unleashed and Confidentials then, but however, so on one side, in the yellow there, that's when Yasmin Finney is talking about the Star Beast. And in the blue is Russell Davies' comments. And this is all about, as you know, the trans character, etc., etc. And so, fair enough, Yasmin Finney is quite happy to see this representation. And as she says, it will be a completely different story, I think, if we hadn't seen Rose growing up. I think representation is what we need and what the younger generation needs to feel like they can do it too. So there you get a trans actor talking about playing a trans character in 2023 then. Then you get the showrunner, who's a public servant. That Rose contains the he and the she and the neither and the both, and that's a new future. Rose goes beyond words, beyond definitions, and it is important, I think, that visibility thing I've said before, like as you were saying, if you grow up seeing this stuff, homophobia and transphobia happens. When it's something you've never seen before, you can temper that reaction and change it. And he just goes on a little bit more. if you introduce these images to people happily and normally and calmly when they're young, then it just becomes normal. It is normal. I don't need to say it's normal, but that's normality, just becomes part of your world. You're not stressed, you don't freak, you don't react. It's a better world. That was Unleashed, really transcribed. Now, I have never heard any other producer talk in that much detail about anything political or societal like that. Am I wrong? I'm trying to think. I am
Not
trying
that
to
I was
honestly
ever
think.
aware of.
Wrong.
No,
Hey,
no.
everybody, everybody, check your mics. Make sure you don't have a fan. Somebody's got a fan or something's blowing on a microphone. We can hear it. I don't want to run off anybody that gets.
So basically, you
So-
know, there's an example of him going quite strong. Go on, Hugh.
So I don't think of anyone saying that, but again, go back to the conversations we've had before about Verity Lambert. I think Verity Lambert was central to Barbara being the type of character that she was, and that was about normalising a woman being sort of like a strong character and being able to take a lead and not just screaming. And I think I think there's a lot that can be done if you want to do that. But I think there's something about the tying together of the statements. So whenever you were talking about John Nathan Turner being controversial and getting and being an early version of clickbait, I think that might make sense if Russell was the producer but not the showrunner.
Hey, Brendan, I just wanted to say something to Hugh real quick, because Hugh, you're the first person I've heard talk about Verity Lambert much. And so I knew you talked about all the involvement she had with Barbara, but I'd never seen a picture of her until Brendan showed one at the beginning of the stream, right? And as soon as I saw it, I thought about the things you said, and I was like, oh, Barbara's like her avatar. Barbara was like an avatar for her. That was the impression I got. Just once I finally saw the picture, I put it together.
Yeah, and that's what I mean. And look, you have to be a strong person to be a producer or a showrunner. It's just that there were breaks and constraints. It's a bit like the president of America has, you know, Congress, the Senate. There's you know, the balance of power, they call it. And of course, when you had a BBC producer, you had departmental heads above you. We all know Michael Grade. We all know Jonathan Powell. We all know how they intervened. We all know how Philip Hinchcliffe suddenly regenerates into Graham Williams, and the humour had to come in because somebody high up got frightened of Mary Whitehouse, and suddenly all the horror goes, and it's all comedy, Doctor Who. We all know that. But RTD, Stephen Moffat, have really injected an awful lot into the show. So I find it very interesting how you can see where I'm going, folks, in the thread. I really do feel as though the excess outweighs the benefits here. Cinnamon, you wanted to say something, I think, and then Rachel.
I think it improves in certain situations, certain contexts as well. I think it improves the quality of the scripts as well. When we talk about showrunners and producers, I mean, look at Moffat. I mean, he was showrunner of Doctor Who and then Sherlock at the exact same time. So if it wasn't already a lot of pressure on Doctor Who, then, you know, he doubled the pressure, you know, worrying about a whole different show. And then that was when, you know, and we talk about, you know, as much as Capaldi was amazing Doctor, the scripts weren't always the best. You know, he gets some good gems like the Mummy on the, you know, the train and the Mummy on the Orient Express. You know, but like a lot of those start seasons, a lot of those, you know, they were a little bit samey. And, you know, and there was always that discussion, wasn't it? Oh, Doctor Who's coming a little bit like Doctor Who. Whereas again, if we had a producer, I don't think that would have happened. And again, there'd be less constraint, there'd be less pressure. I feel like to movies, if, you know, my car two wheel, it'd be a bike or whatever. You know, I get that, but you know, it's if there was a producer at that point in time, then we wouldn't have had perhaps the issues or the story that we don't. If we had a producer, it'd be better, you know.
Well, that's why we're looking at examples, because examples hopefully enlighten us. Now, Rachel, what were you going to say?
Yeah, so it's just going back to what you were talking about with what Russell and Yasmin were saying
Yeah, yeah.
on the Star Beast. I think a lot of this sort of thing also it gets like powerhoused by social media and the news. It becomes talking points. I've often said, particularly in some of my videos, that the golden age of the movie star and the producer, back 50, 60, 70 years ago, is dead, because there's no longer any boundaries and no longer any mystery surrounding that person. So they can now go and say what they like, and they utilize that, and they utilize it in their work as well. So that's all I was going to say.
Do you know, it's a bit like the royal family when the late Queen used to say, you never complain, never explain. And there's an element where you create a mystery, like the Hollywood stars you're talking about. And now, because we know so much about what makes each writer on the BBC crew tick, or why they've been selected, you're reading into it. And actually, if it's not your politics, you really do feel a little bit more challenged. And just like somebody, I think Melanie was saying in the thread, it's getting to that point. If you don't like where RTD is going with it, it's not your show anymore. As in, it's hard, isn't it? Because he's the immovable object, really. And it's a shame because with all the producers, you never got that feeling. You might see Jane Tina's Hawaiian shirt and all the rest of it, and that he was a bit more famous, but and flamboyant, but. JNT still made sure he just made sure the program still existed and was out there. There's a lot of places we can go with this, and I just want to throw one or two up there to get you all thinking. But for example, am I blaming too much the showrunner versus the producer? The BBC itself has imposed itself on this Doctor Who program many, many times when the producers had no choice. So sometimes when we're looking at how producers' mistakes or credit, it has to go higher too with that kind of discussion. It's a really difficult one, this, and I think the only way we can really navigate through this is via one or two of the examples and actually really look at how they've been played. So does anyone want to share one? I mean, I've got, for example, because I'm trying to fill in gaps if nobody's got one. But basically, let's have a look. Last one on RTD, because it's just the present stuff. Davos, as you know, is the last one. Now, we know the story. I'm not going to go over Davos Gate again. I'm not. So in the thread, don't worry. We've done shows on it. Every other stream's done it. I'm not going to do that. But this is what he said in Unleashed. And I wanted to just discuss whether we think this is the role of the showrunner going too far, or is this acceptable? So basically, as you know, time and society and culture and taste has moved on, and there's a problem with the Davos of old in that he's a wheelchair user who's evil, and I had problems with that, and a lot of us on the production team had problems with that, of associating disability with evil, and trust me, there's a very long tradition of this. Excuse me, I'm not blaming people in the past at all, but the world changes, and when the world changes, Doctor Who has to change as well. So we made the choice to bring back Davos without the facial scarring and without the wheelchair support unit. I say this is how we see Davos now. This is what he looks like. This is 2023. This is our lens, and Davos used to look like that, and he looks like this now, and that we are absolutely standing by. Now, there's no compromise at all. Okay, he's the showrunner. He runs everything. He's a supremo. A producer would have to argue that point with the head of drama. And actually, because Davos is such an iconic character, it might have had to have gone to the head of BBC One, possibly. Now, I will say this, and then I'll shut up, right? I'll say this and then I'll shut up on the Davos one. It's just an example. But basically, on the Davos point, I would actually say, if the showrunner says the Davos character is problematic now in 2023, I would say, rather than compromise, mate, because he's having his cake and eating it, he's saying, I really love the Davos character, but I don't like how he looks. Well, I'm sorry, you can't have one or the other. So basically, park and retire the character. Be brave enough to do that as a showrunner, rather than, Now, I know a lot of people want to come in, but I'll let people come in on this example first, and then I will go to Brandon. Rachel?
Okay, so with Davos Gate, the fact that he drew attention to it was what made it problematic. It was never problematic to begin with.
Exactly.
The fact that he went and said all of that,
Yeah.
that made it problematic. And then he introduced, so he gets rid of the life support system, brings in a new wheelchair user in a good role. Well, I say a good role, you know, it depends what your perception of good and evil is. And essentially he gimmicks her wheelchair immediately and blasts, and it's, you know, I say it's cool, but it blasts off rockets and essentially turns it immediately into, in my opinion, a stereotype, a bit of a gimmick, a bit of a tool. And that wasn't fair. So it only becomes problematic if you draw an attention to it. And he drew attention to Davos and immediately to Shirley by turning her wheelchair into a weapon.
I mean,
Shirley?
this is my issue, and Sadako, yeah, we're not debating the disability thing this time. It's been done. As he says, there's a part of me that gets what RTD is trying to do, and fine, we might agree with it or disagree with it. That's not my discussion tonight. My discussion is the idea that if that's his final decision as showrunner, he says that's final. There's nobody else to challenge that. There's nobody else to say, hold on, this is an iconic Doctor Who character.
Exactly.
And yes, you really feel like that's your issue, RTD. However, we as the BBC want Doctor Who to look like Doctor Who, and we want Davos to stay the same. But it looks as though that does not get a look in anymore. And that's when I get concerned about the role of showrunner versus the role of producer. And because he's bothered about the marketing and that. Brandon, you were going to come in.
Oh, I just had one quick thing to say. One of the ones I noticed was like, I mean, look at Moffat when he took over from RTD's first run. You know, I told you and Rachel yesterday that I'd recently, like, within a space of a couple of days, I like binge watched season 10, right? Like I'm on the hunt for where this all went wrong. And I noticed like there wasn't anybody to kind of tap. There must not have been anybody to tap Moffat on the shoulder and say, hey, pal, back up a little bit. You know, you don't need to tell them Bill's gay every episode. They know, they saw, you know what I'm saying? Just little things you saw them doing and like little jabs and stuff is like, you could see there that there needed to be, I mean, that's just one of probably many cases where somebody need to put a hand on their shoulder and say, whoa, back up a little bit.
Yeah, because I think Doctor Who was successful in the end because actually they had budgetary constraints and various other constraints. And in the end, you had to really think carefully and do amazing experimentation with CSO and lots of other things. And so, of course, when you've got somebody who's got no brakes on them and a big budget, you then really go in such a completely different direction to where you could have been with challenge and, you know, breaks on it. I really do think if you don't like the Davos character and you're a Doctor Who showrunner, you need to make a decision. You either stick with the character, which everybody recognizes, or you think it's not good for this generation and he's just retired. It's as simple as that. You can't have both.
You don't have to use them. You don't have, there's no gun to their head that they have to use a villain if they can come up with other ones that'll entertain us, you know.
Yes,
but it's cheap to say, I want to use the Davos name that somebody else created. And yes, but I'm not. Yeah. Go on, Jeremy.
But you see, Russell T Davies has a need to change the character. He has to be seen to change the character. He has to be seen to change everything. And this is why it brings it back to political correctness and wokeness. And that's what he's doing. He's championing that cause. And that's why he's made all the changes in this particular reiteration.
But I'm fascinated. I mean, just with this example, and then tell me to shut up. But with this one example, for example, the same showrunner used Davros before and brought him back and thought in his wheelchair, in his life support machine, he was vital to see. Yeah, so what's happened in the intervening time? I'm not aware of a cultural revolution, actually. I'm not aware of any major.
Hey, was that a pun? Like the revolution of wheelchair wheels?
So, yeah, you know, and I'm thinking, gosh, the same person, the same showrunner now thinks that something he brought back in season 4 suddenly wants the opposite. Incredible.
It wasn't a problem for this producer, Davros. So
no,
I didn't have a problem with it either.
No, and so anyway, so there's my example of where showrunner goes too far.
I agree with everyone on the panel, but I really do have to put this in that I believe with Davros, Russell T Davies may have actually gotten it right, and I know that that's not a popular opinion. But when I saw the Davros change, I thought that someone was making a joke on Twitter because I had never considered Davros to be in a wheelchair. So what I did is I contacted Galen Lay, Broadway music composer and a famous and highly respected public disability rights advocate and public speaker for disability access in the performing arts. She is a long-term wheelchair user, and she said that she did see Davros to be problematic because as a long-term wheelchair user, she did see Davros as being disabled, and she believed it was for the better. So I will take her opinion as a famous public disability rights speaker and advocate, and then go to you, Rachel. Rachel, I also agree with you completely that one of the huge problems in it was calling attention to it.
Yeah. Just to counter that, it's interesting that the lady that said that, because one of my best friends, he's a wheelchair user, and when I told him what Russell T Davies said, he told me to F off. He thought it was hilarious that Russell T Davies thought like that. Because,
how British.
yeah, I know, right? Straight to the point. You think I'm blunt? No, but yeah, he thought completely the opposite. So I just found that interesting. That's all.
Well, and it also supports this overall question: Do the executive producers and the showrunners have too much control? Maybe it wasn't the right decision. How many people were on the team, and who could stop something like that from happening if it was actually wrong?
If he ends up
Does
being
the
on the right
showrunner have
side,
the final say?
But this is the point. I didn't want to get into the Davos debate per se. I wanted to say the actual issue was, in this case, yes, serendipity he might be on the right side of history. That's he might be just lucky this time round. You never know. That's not my point. My point is it's quite clear nobody's challenged him. It's just
so I think there's a separate thing here, which I mentioned before on this, which is I think if you have a character that is perceived as disabled, it is wrong generally to have that as an able-bodied actor. And that then causes the problem more, I think, than having the character of Davros, but having an actor who isn't disabled and who isn't in a wheelchair now, I think, is harder.
Yeah. Go on, Cinnamon. You wanted to come in.
Yeah, it makes it worse. Sorry, I'm quite passionate about this because I've spoken this before, and again, I listen to timescales, and I understand his viewpoint. I even respect it. It's an opinion. We're all allowed one. But again, I would say though that typically activists will have an agenda, so it's natural that someone would have an issue with that. Again, as someone with a hidden disability, as a disabled person, not physically, but again, disabled nonetheless. Who are these people? We had this production team. We had such are you disabled, Russell? Again, this speaking on behalf of people, because for every one person in a wheelchair who said, "Oh no, it was so terrible. It needed to change." I could find you 3 more people who hated it. I've spoken to Daniel. He was absolutely in tears about it. No one has ever really sat down and looked at Davos and thought, do you know what? Yeah, what a terrible character. This needs to change because everyone looked at it. Because, I look at Davos and, everyone in a wheelchair is evil, aren't they? Because, that's totally ridiculous. It's ever seriously. I mean, yeah, the odd person on Twitter who likes to live from there, yes, maybe. But I get so passionate about this because I find it so ridiculous.
We see, this is it, and I'm trying not to. As I said, I'm trying not to go down the Davos debate again because I know where everybody stands. We all do. I think nobody in fandom is sitting on the fence on this one, but it proves a point that, oh my God, almost one of the most famous, iconic characters in Doctor Who history is fundamentally changed without challenge at all. Because he actually says there's been no challenge. We all agree. And I'm thinking, oh my God, the whole production staff. Mind you, remember, as I said, the showrunner is the creative supremo. So he actually trumps them. But basically, he and the whole echo chamber of Bad Wolf, and maybe Disney said, go for it. Now, I can't imagine any Doctor Who fan looking at the history of Doctor Who. I think they'd rather see Davros parked than actually fundamentally change him. But that's just an example.
Yeah, because that, again, if you didn't like it, just rest it. It's hard. It's really common and simple. Like if you have such a problem with it, all of a sudden now, just rest it. To say, we're not going to bring it back, whatever. But again, my partner is profoundly deaf, and we watched the series 9 2-parter with a deaf character, and she, she liked that. The problem is, there's nothing wrong with representation. Of course, you can have representation. There's nothing wrong with having stories that have a deaf character or even a trans character. The difference is, where do you need it? Well, it's nice to have it. Again, I would be nice if there was an autistic character on the show. It would be nice, as long as it was done well, of course. But I don't need it to happen. I don't need to see an autistic person on the show, because it's not what it's about. It's ridiculous. I'm sorry.
I'll let Rachel have the last point on this Davros thing, and then when I say we'll move on, we're still on the same debate, but we'll get off this example. But go on, Rachel, you finalise it for us on Davros.
I'm muted. That I was about to start talking. Yeah. So, all right. So the thing about this whole situation, when you're looking at just like this being problematic and things like that, but what I'm going to say is probably going to sound really bad. But it's not always possible to have a disabled actor, a physically disabled actor, and that could be due to health and safety, due to insurance. But wherever possible, they should actually be in that role. That doesn't mean to say, obviously, you need to discontinue a character for whatever reason. And the thing about working at the BBC or being in any show is nowadays these DEIs, they call for that representation, and that representation is required to be there. It can be in any way, shape or form, but it is a requirement now.
And what is a DEI, Rachel?
It is, well, I don't really know what it stands for, but it's
diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Yeah, I say the DEI, and I couldn't think off the top of my head what it was.
It's a form.
Diversity,
I just want to
inclusion.
Now, just to pull back, and remember, examples really help here. And in the thread, please give us examples of where you think showrunners have really nailed it, masterstroke, mistakes, or have there been more mistakes or more highlights under producers? Now, let me just remind everybody where we stand with Doctor Who. There haven't been that many producers, If you look at that list there, you've got 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 9 producers in the history of Doctor Who. And then we had 3 showrunners. Now, out of all of those, the producer who was there for the longest was John Nathan Turner, followed by Barry Letts. Barry Letts came back to kind of oversee as well, didn't he? And of course, the one who runs ahead of everything really on episodes is Stephen Moffat there. Although I think there's a bit more to add. Right. But what I'd say, here's my question, when you compare all the producers and all the showrunners there, is it seems to me, just to me, and I'm going to provoke, but I think under 3 showrunners, the show has been fundamentally changed, radically changed by so many things. Timeless children, fugitive doctors, war doctors, time war. This could be good or bad, but the
River Song.
The amount of changes in Doctor Who under 3 people compared to those others is, I think, showing you that these people have excessive power, and sometimes I think they're changing the program from something that it actually was. That's me.
Bryn, I think one of the things is it's not just about power. It's if you put that list of producers up, leaving aside those of us who are geeks and who know some of them, and some of them might be known Verity for obvious reasons, John Nathan Turner perhaps for obvious reasons, but even someone like Philip Hinchliffe, who I think is incredibly important, or Barry Letts, If you go outside of fandom, no one has heard of them. No one. Whereas what we now have is Russell Davies's Doctor Who, Stephen Moffat's Doctor Who, Chris Chibnall's Doctor Who, because people hear of them because they do the publicity. And say, people know that now, but then no, it wasn't. It wasn't the face of Doctor Who, which the showrunner is.
Thanks. Does anyone want to come in with another example? I've dominated this and I do apologise. I just want to provoke and get that debate really fired up. You've got 60 years to work with. I've mentioned the Master, the Daleks. Innes Lloyd brought the Cybermen in 10th Planet. These producers were thinking, right, we've got the Daleks, we need something else. Innes Lloyd, was it? Oh, yeah, it was Innes Lloyd with the regeneration, the first ever regeneration. These producers really did do certain amazing things with Doctor Who. The Master introduction. Now, I've got to be fair. The Weeping Angels is a great addition by Stephen Moffat, for example. But, you know, where can we go on highlights and mistakes? I'm sure as Doctor Who fans, you've got loads. Cinnamon? And then after that, I'll go to Rachel, because I know you've got another one.
The Master was a good introduction. I was watching one of the documentaries. I was just checking out the series 15. 15 Blu-ray that release. I was just checking out the feed. And there was a good documentary about oh god, what was his name? I'm having a moment here. The script, it was the writer for, you know, who wrote the War Games. I can't believe
Malcolm Hulke.
Anyone know?
Malcolm Hulke. Terrence Dicks.
No,
yeah.
Terrence Dicks. I can't believe I forgot that.
You carry on. The thread will tell us. Don't worry.
Good documentary.
Yeah.
Terrence sat there talking with Barileks, and him and Barileks, they were discussing again. They were having this discussion as well. That's probably why I remember it now. But they were talking about, you know, because I think he was a script editor for a while, and they were talking about, again, they would have discussions, him, Terrence Dicks, and Barileks, about what they would do and, you know, what they would change. And, you know, he was talking about Terrence Dicks was speaking about his role as a script editor, and, you know, that he wouldn't always necessarily change things, or, you know, there was a really good discussion. They were basically discussing this very topic. And again, you know, it was basically the benefits of that. I just believe, you know, again, even though I grew up in a time where I've always known a showrunner, I do believe there's absolutely benefits to people. And of that, of course, you can have occasional disagreement. You can have, you know, situations like J&T and Eric Saywood where, you know, partnerships can, you know, falter a little bit, and, you know, there is disagreements. But on the whole, Dingo, anyway, you've got a good core, you know, good core unit of people. You know, you can and look at the situations like, you know, just to name one off the top of my head, you know, the issue where, of course, we had a writer commissioned, Robert Hall. Unfortunately, he passed away before he could compart. You know, if that was a showrunner, and that would, of course, lead to chaos, wouldn't it? You know, how, you know, production crew and getting cancelled or whatever. I know that's quite an extreme case, obviously, but, you know, the positive of that there are, you know, ways around that. You know, having someone who's in charge of the show, the publicity of it and stuff, and then commissioning a writer. I think it improves the quality of the story as well. Like I said with Moffat.
Well, yeah, and honestly, examples really score here, because we can all kind of, you know, tear them apart. So, for example, when we're looking at producers, if I'm steering my conversation and my own judgment to say producers overall were a bit more beneficial for Doctor Who, with each one you can say, with J&T you had something like Kayser Vandrazzani. That was a big benefit. He decided the right director for the right thing, which a showrunner does as well, but he wanted a certain way of doing it. He wanted a certain style, and you've got that. But the one story later, you've got the twin dilemma. So you go from one thing to another. So you think, well, okay, then Kayser Vandrazzani is a big hit under J&T. Twin dilemma is a big miss under J&T. You've got somebody like Peter Bryant, okay, in the 60s, Web of Fear, but then you've got the Dominators. You've got somebody like Derek Sherwin, who sadly, in a way, now this is where the thread will kick off either way. in that first season of John Pertwee, he was the one who set up those 4 7-parters. Right, that was an interesting one. So again, the BBC sometimes, with their neglect of Doctor Who, have let the producers run the show. So while we say the showrunners, and I know Hugh says it's not necessarily about power, but sometimes the BBC couldn't give a damn about Doctor Who. And in the end, J&T was just keeping their blooming thing afloat. And there were parts in the late 60s when really Peter Bryant and Derek Sherwin and then Barry Letts were really allowed to do what they wanted to do, because basically the BBC had lost interest. There's that kind of element to this.
Well, even
Rachel,
wasn't it? They did that in 2005, where...
Rachel, you had another example, because examples score well here, helps everybody. So another one of a good or a bad.
Well, okay. So one is not bad, but it's not great. It's good. It's kind of middling. And the other one, well, it's just bad. So I'll start with this one. Okay, and that's Colin's coat. Right, now I just want to be clear here, right? Colin is my favorite Doctor, but that coat was terrible.
He didn't want to wear it, right?
He didn't want to wear it.
He wanted to dress more like Eccleston did, I think he said.
I think that's what he said. You're absolutely right. But now there it is on screen, bright and colourful. I admit I do want that as a cosplay costume. I'm not going to deny that. But he did customize it himself with a little cap brooch, and he changed those on a regular basis. But this is what I feel like with this one, particularly because it came off the back of the Caves of Androzani, which was a brilliant story. What I feel like is, because I said in the last show that Peter Davison's Doctor is more humane, he's a little bit more arrogant, a lot more calmer. And I think what JNT wanted was a bit erratic in his decision. He wanted the complete opposite. Now, he knew that Colin was going to give that to him acting-wise, because Colin, I think, is much more like the earlier Doctors, in my opinion, particularly Patrick Troughton, in many respects. But he also wanted to do that through the costume. And I believe the costume designer thought that was a joke. Yeah, he does wear it well. I do agree. He does wear it well. It's a brilliant cut on him. But the costume designer thought it was a joke. So she brings it to Jonathan Nathan Turner, and he gives it this stamp of approval, and it's like, what were you thinking? And so there is a line. I've got it on a T-shirt. I'm a walking work of art. I've actually got that on a T-shirt with the picture of Colin's coat on it. But he just picked it up and he wore it. But to be honest with you, with a loud and quite brash Doctor, do you really need that kind of coat?
Now, on this, Rachel, honestly, let's go to it, because sometimes it's great to dovetail with a thread. Hello, JWC Reviews. I know you're on earlier, don't worry. Speaking of quotes, J&T's insistence that the Doctor have a designated costume from Davison onwards, and that question mark collar with Tom Baker onwards, is an example of the producer interfering. And I agree with you there. I can't always hit on the showrunners, because I hated that. Yeah. And it's interesting now that you hear other, or maybe the same Doctor Who fans going mad about the Shooty Doctor having so many different costumes to the point where he doesn't have a recognizable silhouette. So which is it? Are we just contrary fans? Are we really having a problem with, as JWC Review says, and I agree with him, that basically, I mean, the cricket outfit also was a little bit more of a cosplay when you really look at it.
Yeah.
It was a standout. And the celery, what the hell was a celery? When you look at the question mark, when you look at Sylvester McCoy's question mark umbrella, I know, John Yulden, you love it, but hello, come on. It started to take the mick out of the programme. And
strangely enough, sorry, Brendan, to cut you off. I wrote down the stick of celery because that was contested actually by Peter Davison. And he said, I will wear the stick of celery so long as you can explain what it's for.
Yeah, yeah. And we had to wait till Caves of Androzani.
last minute. A while.
Yeah, last minute.
Just took a while.
But well, since Rachel has raised Colin's costume, but it looks as though JWC Reviews and myself can raise other ones. And then if we come to 2024, the 15th Doctor's been in a kilt in a nightclub in just a tight white top. He's wearing a leather jacket, blah, blah, blah. Which is it? What do we want? Do we think the showrunner's got it right, that he needs to be a bit more authentic nowadays and changeable? Or do we need to risk going down this marketing road as J&T did?
What I'm wondering if this could possibly be for marketing of action figures, because I'm still waiting for the Shooty Gatwa action figure in just his underwear. Now, imagine if there was a new Shooty Gatwa action figure in each of his costumes. Well, you know, Doctor Who fans have shelves, and I can just imagine a shelf lined up with all of the Shooty Gatwa action figures in each different costume.
I don't think Al Dua's going to do one. I don't think he's going to produce one. I don't think he's got plans for that. Yeah.
I mean, how would now? So I've asked you about costume. Nobody's biting at the moment on that one. What about if I said then?
Oh yeah, it's tradition, man. I would keep it. Sorry, I was actually thinking about what everybody was saying.
Okay.
Just let me say, I'll just say real quick. I wouldn't mess with that. I understand like doing small variations, kind of like Tom Baker did, maybe a different hat, different jacket, little things like that. But I think it's good, especially for young people and kids, to make that image a lot more iconic and recognizable. So they should more or less look fairly similar, unless they're in a special situation or like a big gala or something, need to wear a tux. But overall, I think it's very important to the way they, at least up until now, that they portray the Doctor, and they need to keep doing that, in my opinion.
Right, now, before we just kind of bring the debate to a certain point, I just want to remind people that obviously we've a lot of our panelists might be saving their fire for some of these items. We're going to be looking at these tonight. You can see them there, so stay with us. We are going to be doing that. But I've got my question from my panel now. Since we're talking about producer versus showrunner, who actually was the best custodian of Doctor Who over the 60 years?
You're going to start a fight.
I mean, who did it?
It's going to be a scrap.
Cinnamon wants to start, and don't worry, we will get back to Rachel with your example. But go on, Cinnamon. Who actually, in the end, either by accident or fluke or whatever, was the best custodian of Doctor Who? And was it a producer? Was it a showrunner?
I think it's got to be, for me, I would say J&T. And, you know, yes, he tried to leave at certain points, but, you know, and the fact that, you know, kind of coerced staying a bit longer, you know, he's like, begrudgingly, you know, he spent a lot of his time on that. And do you know what? For the mistakes, I mean, we can look at the things like pretentious question marks and stuff like that, all the silly things of that era, and all the things at the time that fans are frustrated about. But I think, end of the day, from what was it, producer, all this, you know, back in all this other jobs he's done on the show throughout the years, he spent a lot of his life on this show. Really, you know, when we talk about service and stuff like that, that's a lot. He dedicated a lot of his time to the show. As fans, you know, we have our moments, and sometimes we do take it a bit far within reason, and you know, he did a lot, and you know, and he always tried his best, and to make it bigger and make it better and to make it fit into the 80s, didn't he? And it's just a shame that, you know, that it would always get something for him after he left the show, and it never really happened, and he kind of it didn't really get much better from him after that. So it's unfortunate how.
Well, as we go around the panel, I mean, on the J&T score, I have to say, I think it's quite clear that there was a point when he was trying to get out, and I think fair enough for everybody's career, he was trying to get out, but actually, because the BBC was so disinterested in Doctor Who, if he left, the show was over. So bless him, in many ways, he kept it going up to 89. The other thing is, I was at the 1983 convention, the Longleat one, and he got the Americans involved. He had conventions in Chicago. I mean, whether we call him showman or whatever, he was trying desperately to keep this program going. So he was a bigger, larger than life producer, and he really did try and make Doctor Who go global.
He was ahead of his time as well, massively, I think.
Yeah. So where does anyone else want to go with who was the best custodian of Doctor Who
I would say John Nathan Turner. Funny enough, because I think at the end of the day, he had a kind of symbiotic relationship with the show. You know, whether that was the right sort of relationship or not as producer, I don't know. Whether he should have been distant from the show, you know, separate. But I think he did care for the show quite a lot, and I think it does show in terms of him going abroad and producing, promoting it, and I think that shows over the years. However, again, I think he stayed too long. I think he got typecast as a science fiction, you know, Doctor Who producer, and I think he should have left a few years earlier.
I think this is the problem, that when the BBC got neglectful of Doctor Who, you had to hope that there was somebody who actually was putting it first. He certainly didn't put his career first. Brandon, where would you go on your decision?
It's hard, but like if I started to narrow it down, it'd be between Terrence Dicks, JNT, maybe Hinchcliffe. For me, it's between JNT or Terrence Brooks. I mean, just personally for me, as far as talking about the things that I like a lot, you know what I mean? Because we each like a little bit of something. We like a lot of the same things about Doctor Who, but each of us has our own little niche thing that we like about it that's different than the others. Like me and John are partial. We like the Seventh Doctor and stuff. You know what I mean? Or like that whole era. So JNT for me, probably because he gave quite a bit of himself to keep it going. So he's definitely deserves recognition for that.
And you know what? He started the 45-minute format. Raw format in the end, didn't he?
Hey, look, Michael Jordan, he was the greatest basketball player of all time, but he didn't come out and win every game. He tried to win every game. So I think JNT was trying to get slam dunks and 3-pointers, but you can't win every game, and that's definitely one of the worst ones he lost, because I hate that format now that I've watched Classic Who.
It was JNT who actually formatted the repeats into the 5 faces of Doctor Who. Everybody of a certain age, that was a masterstroke. This man loved the program so much, he was fighting it to get it on BBC Two. He was fighting to get new fans in. RTD will make an argument about getting Generation Z and it's not for any of us anymore. Okay, whatever. JNT was trying to win new fans who didn't know there was a Doctor before Tom Baker in the 5 faces of Doctor Who. That was a masterstroke. I have to say, I'm surprised at myself at the moment, but in the end, JNT, he did do an awful lot. He was around for a long time, but he did do an awful lot, and I could see the passion behind it. Rachel, what would you like to say?
Oh gosh, what my producers? Oh, it would be between Verity Lambert and JNT, because Verity had the responsibility of introducing everything and getting people involved and getting people to sit down bums on seats and watching it, and that is a difficult thing to do. That wouldn't be easy to do. And JNT, because he kept it going. Oh, yes. And this one. Thank you. You reminded me. Adric.
You're going to praise that the JNT was really good at casting. That's what you're going to do, isn't it?
Well, here's the thing.
Yeah.
Right. I'm not going to praise that as per se. Now, I don't like criticizing actors. So I'm not going to criticize because I'm an actor. I know exactly how he feels. I mean, this is Earthshock, so but
he's about to feel pretty damn bad.
He's about to feel pretty damn bad. Yeah. I was literally thinking it. I didn't know if I should say. Now, I was actually watching Full Circle today, in preparation, just to see if my opinion is: was it the acting, was it the choice of actor, or was it the fact that he was a bit half-hearted and couldn't be bothered to continue on with Adric's actual proper characterization? And that's nothing to do with Matthew Waterhouse. That's purely to do with the fact that I actually think JNT started out really strong with the introduction of Adric, and sort of gave up on the character and he was on to the next idea.
Yeah.
Now I've written down here, Matthew Waterhouse, it's not his fault. He was very much a newbie actor, and newbie actors are generally in need of something to grab onto, so they've got something to refer to in order to help them maintain the character portrayal. And he was always described as the Artful Dodger type of character, and in Full Circle he definitely had that. And I would say he carries it off as a newbie actor pretty well. I will say that. Now, I do think that the actor who plays his brother would have been better as Adric,
Yeah.
but at the same time, you can't. I can't like fault him for what he was trying to do. You could see he was trying, and he offered the friction. He put the friction there, and he was reacting exactly how it should be. But then, in other stories, they just focused on his mathematical genius, and I think because they didn't focus on all of the elements of Adric, Matthew ended up feeling a bit lost and didn't know quite where to put himself sometimes. And then when they did bring it back, because there were a couple of stories where they brought it back, suddenly the character that you see in the beginning when he's first introduced and how he chose to play it, it comes back, but it's only briefly, because I think they couldn't be bothered with the character, and they realized the character wasn't as popular as what they hoped it would be, which is how they wrote him out, which was a very definite ending. Sad, but very definite ending. And I just felt he kind of got a bit sidelined, and it was a bit unfair, and his character didn't get the development that it deserved. A Big Finish. Now, I've not actually listened to any of Matthew's stories on Big Finish, so I don't know how well they've developed the character, but they did introduce Thomas Brewster, and they said Thomas Brewster is exactly what Adric was supposed to have been. So I just thought, had he been given the chance and actually focused on as a character and as a valid member of the cast.
But isn't it really, when I widen the debate, and I appreciate your example, I know what you're saying. I then look at Chris Chibnall, a showrunner, and he did the same with some of his companions, didn't he? They had an issue, wasn't developed. I think you're Ryan.
Ryan, wasn't it?
Yeah. And so it's an interesting one, whether they all have blemishes and masterstrokes. But it's funny when you've said Verity and J&T in different ways, custodians of the show, the best examples. I mean, obviously, I'd want to go to Philip Hinchcliffe and Robert Holmes, but as people have said in the thread, they didn't have a strong enough tenure to pick a doctor, to really craft the show for a long period. I think they're a very consistent period, and it's one of my favorite periods. But, you know, I mean, J&T, in the end, he picked Peter Davison. He picked Colin Baker. He picked Sylvester McCoy. And I think out of at least one of those, you're thinking was a real good casting. You've got Barry Letts and Tom Baker. What a masterstroke that was. You know, and you just look at which producers have had a major influence and a good judgment call. So when I come to you, Hugh, in the end, where are you going to go on this one? Who's the best custodian?
So, I mean, I agree with a lot of what Rachel said in terms of, I am, as has been said before on here, a Verity Lambert fanboy. But I will say this. I think if you're looking for the reason we are talking today, RTD won.
Yeah.
Because I don't think we would be talking about it. I think he brought it back, and it wouldn't have lasted. So therefore, the reason we've got it 19 years later is because of what he did in the first few series. Yeah.
You can't argue that logic. I mean, really.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Yeah, and actually, he continued with JNT's
story
arcs and two-parters and all of that.
Yeah. There's a lot of follow-on, and I think, you know, the sort of like controversy of now is Russell actually saying it and not doing it as clickbait, and whereas previously he did. And if you're talking about picking doctors, Eccleston was brilliant, and the effect. David Tennant's not my favourite Doctor by any stretch of the imagination, but the effect that Tennant had on people watching was extraordinary.
I'm finding myself torn on so many things. Who have I not brought in yet? I just want to make sure everyone's covered it. Jeremy, have you?
Well, I
he's
agree
got his
with you.
You haven't asked K9, who's his favourite producer.
Oh, there we go.
I can have a quick guess. Let me think. It must have been. And definitely because John Nathan Turner brought K9 and Company, tried to make a little series.
I think it goes with the.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
So timescales. What was your thought on who are you rewarding?
I agree with you. I wanted to give a shout out to Dan Hadley in the chat of Type 40. Howdy, Dan. And thank you. The Type 40 show was actually the first Doctor Who live panel streaming I ever watched on YouTube.
Likewise.
So Dan is to fault for getting me addicted to this stuff. Thank you.
And
Dan.
me.
But
And me.
I was going to say Verity Lambert because of the fact that when the show was so young and so small and so fragile, that if it were not for the fact that she did it right, it may have never even made it past those first couple of years. So I'm going to say Verity Lambert, but I'm kind of surprised myself to be saying this, but I agree with what Hugh just said, because when Doctor Who was brought back, if it had not done right, then we could have lost it. If I remember being afraid after learning on, I think, Usenet, that Doctor Who really was going to come back. And I couldn't believe it at first. And I remember being afraid of watching Rose that first time with the CBC leak, because I thought that they were going to screw it up. That was my fear after waiting through that 16 years where we didn't have anything except for the 96 movie. I was very concerned that it was going to get screwed up. And well, guess what? It wasn't screwed up. It was real Doctor Who, and it was back. So if I had to pick between the two of them, I'm going to go with what Hugh said, with it being RTD1.
One thing I'm going to have to say, because I'm quite surprised at this, I prepared slides and everything, that Barry Letts, remember, was seen as such an overview of Doctor Who that he was brought back to keep an eye on season 18 with J&T, wasn't he? I mean, Barry Letts, the BBC felt was a safe pair of hands with Doctor Who. So when we're calling out custodians of Doctor Who, he was in a way seen by the BBC, formally seen as the custodian by being brought back for season 18 as a kind of executive producer, kind of associate producer role. I mean, and Barry Letts, I always do, I have to give them credit. I can't ignore them. Some of the discussions they had, starting with Terror of the Autons and going through, the Master, I said it earlier on, but the Master, it's been a character that's been used by everybody. Everybody wants to use the Master, whether it's Missy, whether it's Rasputin version. They all are appreciative, surely, of what Barry Letts and Terence Dicks invented. You needed the Doctor for the longevity of the show to have a Moriarty arch nemesis. I think it's been a spoiled character, and I personally don't want the Master back for ages. And the fact that he's now been turned into a gold tooth and all the rest of it, unbelievable. And it's a spoiler. And this is the other little argument about producer versus showrunner. All the producers, I thought, were respectful of the Master creation. The Deadly Assassin, a burnt-out husk. The Keeper of Traken, Anthony Ainley, was almost emulating Roger Delgado in physique, looks, and all the rest of it. I thought the producers were respectful of somebody else's creation. I said earlier today, Davros and RTD, not so. And so, when you look at the Master creation now, I don't recognize the Master now. The Master isn't a giggling Gertie. The Master isn't a manic, crazed creature. And this is where I think the showrunners have just gone off. They've got a toy and they've gone off on it. And so I want to give tribute to Barry Letts and Terence Dicks, because during that period, they sat down and they thought about restrictions on Doctor Who. I always loved the Blinovich limitation effect in Day of the Daleks. I loved that kind of detailed thinking. And I just think it's lacking now. Does anyone wants to come in before we conclude on this debate, before we go into the news?
Can I just say I've really enjoyed this debate, because it's one of those ones where it's not about what's It's not about a yes or no question. It's just
Right.
about getting people's perspectives, and I found it fascinating.
And everybody's kind of right, but in their own way. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
I know exactly. I was sitting here thinking the same thing. Hughes, like, this is kind of cool because everybody's pretty much able to justify why what we've basically discovered is a lot of these people were just an essential component to the survival of the show and the success of it. So it has been really fun talking about.
It's
I said earlier, didn't I? You know, there's no right or wrong answer.
Right,
You
right,
know,
exactly.
There's pros and cons for both sides. It's like the wrong way to do it. It's just, you know, back at that point, you know, in the classic series, TV and on television was made in a certain way due to the limitations of technology at the time, or just the general way of how things were done. And as we've gone, as the years have gone by, we've picked up influences from other countries, and we picked up and we learned, from habit to how other people have done it, and we've adapted, and for good or for worse, it's one of those things, and it was one of those changes. And like I say, it absolutely benefits, pros and cons for both arguments, really.
And the thread we've got so many different ideas. I mean, nobody's agreeing. I mean, I know J&T, for his tenure, I have to say, he's got a lot. But we've gone from Barry Letts, Verity Lambert, Philip Hinchcliffe. There's a load getting mentioned. And in many ways, that's what you'd want as a Doctor Who fan, because I'd like to give credit really to everybody who's actually put in on Doctor Who. And yes, RTD, I have to say, has done his bit as well. There's some, there's some fun there, and there's some, and he did relaunch Doctor Who very well. Let's be honest, he did. It's just in this present iteration. Now, for those who've joined us in the thread, we're reaching an interesting interregnum, they'll call it now, right? Which is, I think, Dan, if he's still with us from Type 40, has a certain way of putting this, and he's very good at using adverts. We have the Who-pets who went to Spain to actually emulate the two Doctors. I call it an excuse for the thread and our panelists maybe to go and refresh before we really hit the big topics out there, because I tell you what, I'm dying to hear some of the opinions. I'm dying to hear the thread on, honestly, Millie Gibson, is she in or is she out? Is she really, truly back for good? Peter Davison, don't we all love him? He's actually said his piece, not for the first time, and I love what he said about the BIGENERATION. Jinks Monsoon, who the hell is she in this series? And of course, we've got our predictions. 14th Doctor's a Valeyard. Sutek is back. Ruby Sunday is a Time Lord. You can't go away, can you? Well, you can go for a refreshment, but please be back in 5 minutes, okay? So I'm going to time you. The Who Pet in Spain, 2 Doctors remake. See you in 5.
I'm supposed to be on the loo on my own. We strokers need a minute to ourselves, you little cheeky devil. What is it, Walkie?
Sorry, Grandad. I'm worried about the Sensphere.
The Sensphere? What's happened to the Sensphere?
I think it's going down the pan, Grandad.
Oh, there's a few things gone down the pan. I'm not sure about the Sensphere. I'm just trying to wipe here, son. Can you just leave me for a second? Us strokers like some peace and quiet for a moment. What is it, Walker? You've got me in a right tizzy here.
Grandad, why do you look like the mummy from the Orient Express?
Well, you've had me in a right fussing around here, have we? What's the story then about the Sensphere? Tell me.
Grandad, I'm worried. I overheard Uncle Brendan. He's worrying about the channel.
What's happened?
I don't think he can afford it, and it's going down.
It's going down the pan.
Yeah, the figures and everything, the viewers.
We can't lose the sense for you.
No.
We'll have to come up with a plan. But first, Walkie, I think I need to get changed. I can't see, I can't move. I am like the mum in Showrunner Express. Oh.
Grandad, have you had any thoughts yet?
Not yet, son. I'm in the 0 room.
What about now, Grandad?
I'm just cooling off, son. Still ruminating on it. Shut the door, please.
The bells, those Spanish bells of Santa Maria. Bong, bong, bong. Grandad, any ideas now?
Walkie, I'm trying to sleep. I've had a terrible night's sleep. I've been dreaming of bells and stuff. It really is bothering me, this. The sense-sphere farce. Well, Walkie, I've had a damn good think. But you shouldn't be bothering your granddad when he's having his precious sleep and thought time. Anyway, the sense-sphere can be saved. This is the plan. We go big budget. Big budget. We're going to have sex. We're going to have drugs. We're going to have violence. Basically, it's going to be like a 1980s Doctor Who. Bit of Resurrection of the Daleks, bit of Caves of Androzani, drugs busts. I think that's the future, son. What do you think?
That sounds a bit over the top, Grandad.
No, you don't understand. Us classic Who fans know what gets the viewers and the punters in. So, the plan is that to save the sense-sphere, we need all those ingredients. We go big budget, and that'll save the YouTube channel, and Mr. Brendan will be very pleased with us, I think. What about that, eh? I think we're onto it. Never fear, the sense-sphere will be here. Oh, it's the bells of Santa Maria. I think I feel a calling. I'm called to Spain. Called to Spain. Called to Spain. Well, here we are, son, on the Costa Packet at the Grand Pacacaca Hotel. Big budget indeed, I tell you what. I have a feeling to go big budget and violence, we need to do the 2 doctors. Do you remember the 2 doctors?
I do, Grandad, yeah.
Oh, yes. Lots of nasty things happened in that. And those bells did give me an indication we needed to go to Spain. So here we are on the Costa Packet Grand Pacacaca Hotel.
Grandad, I got some great footage for the big budget sense-sphere film that we're doing. Grandad, what?
I feel different this time. What's wrong with me? Oh my God! What's going on? I feel like an androgum. Will they die? Does anyone care? No. I'm always arguing with those puppets. They think the sense-sphere's doing badly. Clear off. I tell you what, they're up themselves. I tell you those lot. So, I think we all feel refreshed now. I'm ready for this. So, of course, I've been baiting everybody all night with these headlines. So, I think it's important they actually deliver on the goods, isn't it? Now, if you like what we're doing, remember, please like and subscribe. You can find us in various places out there. You can find us on X, Instagram, Facebook. We have our own fan community forum. Emulating, I have to say, if Dan's still there, you know, you're the guru on this one. And email at sensethesphere@gmail.com. You know, please join us. We are growing and we're enjoying your company. So, the first headline today we're going to talk about is this one. Oh, is she back for good or what? Yeah, they said that we all saw the pictures, didn't we? Millie Gibson next to Verada see-through with the Doctor in the middle, in the same place at the same time. Oh my God. So what is going on? And of course, we had a few tasty quotes, like many doctors who have come before him. One is not enough for the 15th. And in season 2, he will have 2 companions by his side. And it goes on, says where she's from, strap in for the journey, blah, 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 the usual little bits of hype. And, you know, RTD trying to not say that he's been, you know, pushed by Disney, because a lot of people thought, oh, she's a Disney kind of deposit. He said he first worked with her in a BBC production of A Midsummer Night's Dream, and that's, I think he's trying to put that to bed. I'll be honest with you, because he knows that people are trying to see where are Disney having an impact. She obviously says she feels lucky, and this is a great moment for her, and I don't blame her. It's a good series, but can anyone read in the tea leaves here? Because I think we can have 2 truths at once here. They've confirmed that Millie Gibson is in season 2 with Verada, but I thought I knew that already, that she's coming back to do about 3 episodes. Is this a nice manipulation and a bit of spin?
Damage control.
Yeah,
it's a
it,
bit
it
like,
feels a bit late.
we kept seeing reports the last few months and all this and all that and the other. And of course, since this news has come out, you've now seen everyone go, ha ha, see, you were wrong. Well, not necessarily. You have to sort of pay attention to what's actually been said. The thing is, you can have 2 companions for season 2. Yes, that can still be true. But like we also know, Millie was going to do the first 3 episodes anyway, and apparently she was going to leave, or whatever that was.
Yeah.
And then for the rest, maybe Verada could come through. So that would still technically, you know, count as 2 companions for the season. I can't remember if it says maybe on the. I can't remember if it's, you know, in the same.
I think there's going to be some episodes when they're.
I just want to clarify that. Obviously, that can't happen, but I keep seeing this whole. This proves the fact that she was sacked. We don't necessarily know that she wasn't yet, but I mean, she's still going to be in the season, obviously. But I think, like you said, you know, this doesn't mean that she's not going to be leaving the show at some point, maybe June this season, whether it was after the 3rd episode or whatever it was.
Well, later,
what does everyone else think?
Later in this discussion, I'll remind people that me and Rachel have discussed about this one, and I'll let Rachel score the goal. But what does everyone else think of this news? I mean, it looks like it's good news, but I actually wonder whether it's actually any news at all. Any thoughts, Hugh?
I was very surprised. And, you know, at some point, I thought that they had already filmed the 2nd Shurigatwa season. So when I saw the news that Millie Gibson was only going to be there for 1 season, I was really confused by that. And it makes me wonder. It leaves me scratching my head. What in the world happened? And why was there news of her leaving if apparently she hasn't? I don't quite understand how that happened. Now, Rachel and I had talked about this on a previous panel, speculating that maybe she was under an NDA, which is why she could not say whether or not she had left the series or not. But how did the news get this so wrong, that she was leaving and then all of a sudden she's back? Something about that doesn't compute.
I found it quite funny in this report here. I'll just go big screen for a second, because there's 2 elements where it says, while there was no official comment from Millie or Shooty, the trio already seemed to have a fantastic bond. And at the top bit it says, they are clearly giddy and excited as they pose with their arms around each other. Oh, wow, that's pathetic reporting. As Jordan has said, body language in those pictures are pulling away as well. If we really want to look at it, I mean, I don't know what to read, but I don't think we've learned anything new, but they're pretending this is new news, so to speak. You?
Yeah, I mean, I'm with Cinnamon on this. I'm not particularly sure what we know that's more than what we knew before. I do worry about the fact that if this was the case and they didn't want the story to be spun the way that it was when Millie Gibson was sacked or whatever, that they didn't speak out then and say no, she hasn't. And even now it doesn't actually say that, but we'll see.
See, I still think we're going to get a time flight moment. You know, I have my theories on RTD and on what formatively affects him creatively. I think there'll be a version of Ruby Sunday seems to leave, a bit like Tegan seemed to leave in Time Flight. Then we'll see her again for a bit in season 2. And this story on the surface looks like everybody's happy, clappy, but I still think they're trying to cover the fact that there's been a bit of disagreement. I still think they're trying to cover for the fact that go on, Rachel, your theory on Ruby Sunday, when you mentioned episode 7 of the new series, The Legend of Ruby Sunday, your theory was?
Oh, good God. Which one? That she was a space baby?
Well, you had that one, but you also thought she died.
Yes, that she was not in time and she was removed from space and time.
Yep.
That's right. Hang on a minute. It's in my old notebook, the one that's mixed in with all the other stuff.
She's got a special one for Sensphere now, but honestly, Rachel, I'll just...
Yeah, I've got it.
Yeah, okay, go on.
Okay, so the Legend of Ruby Sunday is that she does not exist in space or time, a bit like Charlie Pollard from the Big Finish stories. I theorize that she throws herself into the onslaught to stop all life being extinguished and erasing herself from time, where only the Doctor can remember her, which results in him breaking the fourth wall to tell the story, you know, like he does in the trailer. The only recorded memory is his ghost in the TARDIS, and then he tries to get her back into time, the Doctor, but is unable to, even though he finds her. So he takes her to a place where she can just exist and be a legend. It was quite a theory. But yeah, that was the theory.
Yeah, well, Retro Doc. Hi, Retro Doc. I've seen you on so many streams. Thank you for joining us. I'm chuffed to death. Millie Gibson in season 15 will be CGI. I mean,
or AI.
AI.
Oh, AI, yeah. Anything goes nowadays. Anything goes. I mean, and Rachel mentioned Adric earlier, but I do think we're going to have an Adric kind of moment with one companion. She's the only one. And then we have a time flight moment. And then she reappears because he doesn't want to have a Donna Noble moment where everybody goes mad about the memory erasure. So a theory on top of a theory on top of a theory. This is why I love being a fan. But I tell you what, I think they are spinning this. What about you, Brandon?
Yeah, something's not right. They course corrected something, but it's hard to tell what though, because so many people are kind of bucking up against a lot of the things that they're doing. Like a lot of the traditional fans aren't very happy with just the look of what they're doing, especially after the trailers and everything. So I'm thinking maybe they did fire, maybe they brought her back, maybe it was a swerve or some misinformation. It's just so hard to tell in this internet day and age. You could go 10 different directions, but I was pretty surprised because I didn't know she was going to be in the second season. I thought it was kind of silly that they were promoting the Doctor hanging out with 2 companions like it was some novel thing. I didn't really get that. You know, it was like, oh well, I guess so because this is season 1 of a new show. Shoot me. No, I don't want, I don't see it like that. So it just didn't make any sense to me why they were saying that to begin with.
I think one of the BBC spokespeople actually came out and said this is the first time the Doctor's traveled with 2 companions.
They did. That's what I'm talking about. They
the show before.
The lady said something along the lines of like making it like this was a big deal, and I figured it was going to say something after, like this is the first time the Doctor's been, teamed with a girl of color born on a Wednesday and a white lady born on a Tuesday, so this is really monumental and stupid.
Yeah, Rachel.
I just want to say,
get these people.
I would like to say about that article that you just read, that could have actually been done months ago before any of the stuff about Millie got out.
Very good point.
Because if she has been fired but she's still under the NDA, she still can't talk about the fact that she's been fired. She can't talk about it. So this could have been months ago before that all happened.
Yeah.
And as Retro Doc is saying, this news strikes him as RTD's spin at Disney's behest to limit bad publicity. And I think we're all tiptoeing down that alleyway, I think. Is there anybody who's challenging it?
Well, I'm really surprised about what Rachel just said because that's something I'd never considered. This article could have been from months ago.
Yeah, same
Yeah,
here. I didn't
yeah.
even stop to think about that. Same
Yeah,
for me
never
too.
thought of
Quick.
that.
Yeah, because there are you can like give interviews for something,
Yeah.
and there's like there can actually be a delay. Like timescales, you interviewed someone from Big Finish a little while ago, didn't you? But there had to be a delay because he was under an NDA or something.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Yeah,
And that does cause considerable delays. You know, you can
Yeah.
record an interview and it may be a month later
Yeah.
before you actually get it finally approved to go live.
exactly. So this may have been done months ago, but no approval had been made for it to go live. And seeing as we're very
be.
close to May,
Yeah.
that's probably why we're getting it now.
Yeah, and we need good news stuff. Well, there you are on that one. I have to say, it seems to me every time I do latest news, there has to be something about Millie Gibson. Bless her. Honestly, isn't it? It's like what's going on? She's definitely sacked. Oh no, she's back. I mean, honestly,
the magazine says more about this as well.
yeah. Well, I mean, I'm losing faith with the Doctor Who magazine. I have to say, it just seems like.
Yeah, I stopped reading it too. Now I just pick up the collections of the comics when they come out if I want.
So this one, I have to say, I don't know if it's the nostalgia. It's also nostalgia mixed with now. But I have to say, oh, God love him. And happy birthday to Peter Davison, who's 73.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Don't you just love him? Me and Noel were talking, and Noel, on Noel's show, me and Cinnamon were talking about this the other day. Now, my theory is Peter Davison either thinks, look, he's got his pension sorted out. He's a very, very successful actor. He's on West End. He's on television an awful lot. And he just seems to keep going and going. And he's obviously going to be on the Doctor Who convention circuit. So basically, is he thinking he's untouchable? Or is he just one of those brave actors? Because he's done it before before he did initially say it was a shame that they picked Jodie Whittaker because lads need a male role model. In fiction, and then it suddenly disappeared. And here he's actually questioning, not in a strong way, but he is actually saying, I don't know why they did the bi-generation. Join the gang. He has some interesting things to say. And the thing I don't really understand, I'm a huge fan of Doctor Who, but I'm not as big as David Tennant. And the bi-generation basically means I still exist. It's an interesting concept. I don't quite know why they did it. Yes, he's trying to make a Who-niverse. He's guessing on that one. So he knows he can.
I was just going to say, I think it's a vehicle to be able to bring back the former doctors who are still alive in the age that they are now and explain. For me, it feels like it fits into that Who-niverse thing, like what you were talking about, where that way, hey, we can use Sylvester again, and it ain't weird like in Power of the Doctor. You know what I'm saying? Where they're aged up now. That's what I was thinking. Maybe it was one of those weird expansion sort of things.
Do you know? But I was saying this on another stream. The thing that I actually find problematic about this, there's the bi-generation, of course. But then, as Peter Davison's actually saying here, I don't know why he's done it. If it is, as you say, Brandon, because we want a Marvel universe, Who-niverse, and all the rest of it. But it's not fair because it doesn't cover it properly. You can't bring William Hartnell back. You can't bring Troughton back. You can't bring John Pertwee back. You can't really bring Tom Baker back. So basically, this is like New Who plus the latest one. In the end, you do just start to wonder whether, was there a motivation behind the bi-generation, or was it just a nice little wheeze to do that binary thing? That's the only.
Well,
because
Brendan, if I can disagree with you on one thing, you said you can't bring William Hartnell back, and no, yes, you can bring. Well, not William Hartnell, but you can bring the first Doctor back.
Yeah,
David Bradley. Actors that have performed that role so far. So I believe that yes, they can be brought back. You know, I don't know who would portray Patrick Troughton properly.
His son, David Troughton.
Well, yeah, there you go. There you go, Rachel.
But
But he's an older man too.
But this is what I mean. We need to kind of mention. I mean, Peter Davison is a fan of Doctor Who. He just says not as big as David Tennant. But the point is, he doesn't understand it. So he's joining a lot of us going, why did you do it? Is it because you're going to do something with the David Tennant, 14th Doctor, news item coming up in a minute, or is it just a great wheeze to link this binary thing? Why have you done it? And it doesn't seem like an equal playing field because you can't really bring every Doctor back. So it's going to be, more Tennant. Ooh, I mean, do you know what? From those quotes, I don't think Peter Davison can be bothered if he comes back or not, to be honest.
I don't think he cares.
No. So
I
I
don't
don't think
He'll stick with the conventions, sticks with the voiceover. He's happy doing that.
And he's appearing Beyond Paradise currently.
Yes.
So I mean, he's not struggling to appear on mainstream television, and he's about to do Kiss Me Kate. So he's got no problems.
He talks a lot of common sense as well. I agree with him.
I did like the fact that he hasn't seen the 60th anniversary stuff.
Yeah.
Maybe he's just voicing the opinions that the other actors have as well, but he's just being the voice.
But Rachel, you're the actor on the panel. This is what I really think. Peter Davison is mildly questioning something. He's being quite polite, really, as his fifth Doctor used to be. Do you know what? His top story, as most fans would say, is his regeneration story, The Case of Androzani.
Yeah.
Jeopardy, sacrifice, heroic. And now the BIGENERATION takes all that importance away. It destroys his work.
It
and
does.
So when you look at it, he's questioning it because he's going, why have you done that? Apparently I still exist. Apparently my greatest story no longer has any point. I have to say, I think he's been very polite, but I actually think deep down he's thinking, you've absolutely just wrecked everything. You've wrecked my work.
But I mean, hadn't he already done that by coming back?
And that Tales of TARDIS thing.
Well, no.
He was in Power of the Doctor too.
No, with Tennant. And the Stephen Moffat thing.
Yeah.
The
little kids charity thing or whatever. The short.
Yeah.
Is that considered canon?
Who knows with the world? But I mean, I think it sort of undermined it to an extent.
It did join to the. It did lead to Voyage of the Damned, though, didn't it? It was a filler. It could be seen as canon because it conveniently just went from what to the next bit, didn't it?
I forgot it did that.
And actually, I didn't find Time Crash problematic. I liked some of the dialogue in it. Actually, I know there was the issue that you suddenly see a new Fifth Doctor, as in older. But like I say, Peter Davison doesn't sound bothered about whether he comes back or not. I don't think I can see.
They explain that in that Children Need. They explain why he was older because of the payment was some sort of excuse that it was the temporal shift of them, whatever happened. And I know it worked because that was just a multi-Doctor story. It wasn't trying to change any sort of law of why he was there. It was just a gimmick. I didn't.
But I find it fascinating. I find it fascinating.
Go ahead.
I mean, one of my points, as I've said, is it destroys his best work and its importance, and it does that for every Doctor, of course. But the other thing is, what was I going to say? Big one. It misses the point of regeneration. Every regeneration is a moment of atonement, a moment of self-sacrifice, a moment to. I used to say, when it wasn't New Who, Doctor Who was just adventure and story. And suddenly, what you found with the regeneration story is it was about the Doctor at last. And that's all been taken away by this BIGENERATION nonsense. No jeopardy, no importance, no value. The whole mystical quality of a regeneration has gone.
And there's no forced change because you still got both. You got the old Doctor and the new one. There's not that forced change of theme and you know what I mean, and personalities and that adaptation because you still got the old. It makes no sense.
Yeah,
as Peter Davison said, and so I think he's speaking for us. And my final thing on this, but please come in everybody because I'm triggered by this. When you meet a Doctor Who actor, if they go on a TV program and they all get asked about Doctor Who, what do they say? They know they're from Gallifrey. They know they'll mention Gallifrey. They've got 2 hearts. Their TARDIS is parked in the car park. They know some of the easy bits to do that casual viewers recognise as Doctor Who. Will they mention BIGENERATION? Will there hell? Will there hell? And I find it interesting that Peter Davison is like going, I don't know what this is. I don't know why they've done it. But he would gladly go on any show. So, oh, yes, I've got 2 hearts. Oh, yes, I'm from Gallifrey. Yes, I'm a Time Lord. And that's canon. And this is twaddle.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like the half human thing.
Yeah.
You think RTD called up called up called up David Tennant and said, hey man, you need to get your father-in-law in line.
Yeah, I know. I joked about whether they have Sunday meals, but it actually says later on in the article that actually David Tennant doesn't watch anything Davison's in, or they don't talk about it, and vice versa. And maybe it's an actor thing within that family that, because otherwise they'd just be getting boring with each other talking about work. I mean, do they want to talk about work when they're at home with family? Maybe that's the agreement. So. Hello, for someone. Didn't it clearly state in the giggle that BIGENERATION happens very rarely? Yeah, like it shouldn't happen at all. It's a myth. Or am I missing something? If not, then surely it's possible that none of the other doctors don't have BIGENERATION. But isn't this the problem, that it's in the Unleashed, or it's in the commentary, that RTD suddenly says a little bit more? So what's the retro doc here? What would be the in-story purpose of BIGENERATION anyway? Well, we're going to come to it. Don't you? I mean, retro doc, there's almost a logic to this. We are going to mention it. What purpose would it serve for the Time Lords? RTD has turned the Time Lords into tribbles. Yeah.
Right. Sorry, I'm just thinking about the showrunner and producer sort of thing. This would have been exactly the sort of thing, had it gone on long enough, that JNT would have done.
Oh, you mean what?
BIGENERATION.
Oh, would he?
I don't know. Maybe.
When we all talk about JNT, and there's all the there's all the talk about his flamboyancy and that. Would he have really gone there with this? I didn't like the look of it. I didn't think it made sense. I think it made Doctor Who look cheap. I mean, the 2 companions pulling them apart like you were operating on 2 conjoined twins. What the hell was this? I just don't know what the theory is, although we have one retrodox to stay with us. So has anyone got one final thought on the second piece of news there? I agree, Peter Davison. Happy birthday. Enjoy your 73rd. And
happy birthday to Peter Capaldi.
Yes, he's 66, isn't he? 66.
Right.
It's all the Peters. So, the next one. I think we'll have opinions. Here we go. Jinks Monsoon, who changes their name quite frequently. There's the latest spelling somewhere. I've got it up there. Is the Maestro. Right. Does that help us? Is the Maestro. There was a little bit added to it that Jinks Monsoon's Doctor character is revealed in the Devil's Chord. As you know, Maestro means teacher, but it can also be translated as master, apparently. And this is obviously in our good old Beatles episode. And then we were told some great news that, Jinx came all the way from Broadway, being in Chicago, straight on the plane and straight into the role of the Maestro, and seemed to enjoy the role quite, it's a performance and a half. She absolutely blew us away. Well, of course, RTD would say that. It was so cool to see her transfer her skill set to the show. She fits Doctor Who so well. Well, yeah, it's what type of Doctor Who are we talking about? And I'm just putting out there. So she's the Maestro. Come on then. What does that mean? What's our theories on it?
Well, I actually learned this on Rachel's YouTube channel. Now, the last time we talked about this last week, I had not seen the news story. So when I saw the title card for today's chat, where it said, who is the Maestro? That was a really good question for me, because I had no idea who the Maestro was. Now, I've since read the news story. I watched Rachel's excellent breakdown, and I'm happy to see Jinks Monsoon is going to be on Doctor Who. I'm really happy to see another successful American actor that actually gets to go down in history on Doctor Who. And Jinks Monsoon is American. She was born in Oregon. She trained in Seattle, and I'm really looking forward to this episode with her in it. And for anybody that doesn't know about her career, just check her out on Wikipedia. Now, I had a theory when I realized that Maestro means Maestro, which goes back to the piano design in the costume, because it made me think of back when the TARDIS was a piano. Well, I was totally wrong. It was a pipe organ. And that was a Cybermen episode back in the Colin Baker era. So I immediately thought that Jinks Monsoon was going to be the master. You know, somebody has the gold tooth, so the master is still out there somewhere. But since I think that there's way too many indications pointing towards Jinks Monsoon being the master to just completely throw us off. And while I initially thought that she was going to be the master, I think that when this episode airs, we're going to find out that she's not.
No,
red herring.
100% is not the master. Now, Jeremy, I know. Thank you, John Yulden. It's an alternative universe Turlo. Retro Doc is trying to work it out, obviously, with if because some people do think it's Jinks Monsoon's Maestro character has picked up the master tooth at the end of the giggle, then obviously it can't be the master. Jeremy, are you excited by the Maestro and what she is?
No, not really. Either it'll be a very good episode, classic episode, or it'll be like a very long trip down a long winding road.
What are your tea leaves telling you?
Well, tea leaves in my tea bag are not telling me anything, but the feeling of it is she just reminds me of a 1960s villain out of Batman. It feels very much kind of comic-y book type of a story. But it might be very good. I might be completely wrong, and I might like it. But hopefully that Jinks Monsoon is not going to play the master, and that's my opinion on it, though.
Yeah, I mean, this is a location shot from actually the Devil's Chord, so it gives you a little bit more about the character. We actually see the full costume here, and you can see. I think it is right to say, I think it is a performance and a half. It looks like a performance and a half. Whether that is what they want, because obviously we don't know, we're just guessing. And like I say, I'm not saying anything about having a drag queen in it at all, actually. What I'm saying is, I don't know if the characterization, as I'm seeing it, is what I want from Doctor Who. I still get those late 1980s vibes of Panto, of Ken Dodd, that kind of thing. Now, I hope I'm wrong. I want to be wrong. I want to love Doctor Who. But that looks like Disney characters, that Ursula. That looks like Cruella de Vil. Some say it's a version of Bette Midler. You know, I don't know.
The Maestro thing is interesting because it is so obvious that you go, it can't be because it's too obvious. In which case you then go, maybe it is because it's too obvious that they would do something. They'd have to do something else. I ended up trying to work out whether, because Carrie Mulligan appears married to Leonard Bernstein in the film Maestro, whether there's any connection there. But that's what you end up doing in these things. You go around in circles and go a bit mad.
You can. I mean, we all know this seems to be the musical episode, and you see the Doctor in one of the trailers singing. You see them all dancing in the recording studio.
Yeah, that's inside the actual recording part of Abbey there, because look, you can see McCartney's bass in the background.
Yes, and you do see. Oh, come back to that. You do see. I've got it somewhere. I'll come back to it. Where you've got a shot of the Beatles, but you've got the Doctor singing and dancing. You've got lots of people singing and dancing. As Timescales has said, and it says in the article that Jinks Monsoon's just come from Broadway singing and dancing. So this does seem to be the slam dunk musical episode. And obviously it's about the Beatles. So therefore it kind of fits. It's just, is it going to therefore, because as Rachel said, I don't know where and what stream, but when I asked you as an actor about musicals, which you have a musical theatre background, don't you?
Yeah, I do. It's my degree.
And as I said to you, my theory on that is it's more of a heightened acting, isn't it?
Yeah, like when you get to a certain point in time within the show, you can't find the words to continue, so then it breaks into song, and it's the song that does the storytelling for you. That's essentially the purpose of having the song there. Some songs, though, serve a different purpose, and that could be because there's something going on that they need to change behind the set, and they're generally quite a entertaining, but not always a serving to a plot. So it could just be quote unquote a filler. It's not the best way of putting it, but Avenue Q is a good example. I'm not wearing underwear today. I am, but the song is I'm not wearing underwear today, and he just Brian, the character, just randomly comes on, sings this like 2-minute song. It's really short, it's really random, and then his wife yells at him, "Get off or get a job or something," and then suddenly the set changes. The set's completely different. So it was a filler. So they all serve a different purpose, but the main purpose is to tell the story.
Now, Rachel, you've said this to me before on a previous stream, but help Melanie Weston out. She's asked, there is a devil called Right. Her character has something to do with it. And you've obviously looked into this, haven't you?
Yeah, there is a devil's chord. It's one, it's a tritone. You can play it on the guitar, but I'm pretty sure you can play it on the piano as well. It's known as the devil's moniker. I think moniker, have I got that right? Hang on a minute. Let me check I've pronounced that correctly. I never know. Let me just check. Musica. I knew I got that wrong. And essentially, there's like this theory behind it that if you play the tritone, the devil's chord, it creates such a like scary, haunting, like weird sound that it can like summon the devil. That's what they used to believe, that it could do that.
Yeah, like on
band
guitar, I
Kiss
think
was actually accused of that.
Yeah, they were. On guitar too, when you try to play it, you have to spread your fingers so far because you're playing like two octaves above one note to the other, to the C, and then you're 2 octaves above. So like you had to stretch your hand. It never summoned the devil, but I got a laugh out of it.
No, but apparently Black Sabbath have played the devil's chord for some of their stuff. I don't know if that's true, but
now when I come to the other item, I'll say what my theory is if you haven't seen one of our earlier shows. But I do think Jinks Monsoon's Maestro fits into something else, and it's nothing to do with the Master at all.
Is it a sarcophagus, Brandon?
I mean, why would I say that, Brandon? Why would I say that at all? I mean,
funny enough, my theory as to who Jinx is might actually tie in with this sarcophagus as well.
Oh, you see, I think we're leading to this item. We might be doing 2 at once. So those who've maybe just joined us and have never seen our streams for a while, we have done a few on trailers, like everybody has. I know we're not special, but we like to think we've got some really interesting theories, and they're not just made up. I have really gone big. I'm not going to do it now, but if you go to our stream on Sutek's Returns to Doctor Who, I've got loads of clues where I think when we get to the Empire of Death, I do think there's a strong chance it's somebody as big as Sutek. It goes into the gods and the fantasies, and I won't say too much more because, like I said, please just have a look at that and you'll see our theories. We also said when we looked at the trailers, is it the meddling monk coming back? Is Jodie coming back as a cameo? There are various things we were talking about. We've also said, and our lead into this news item, that Ruby Sunday could be a time lady. We've also said that the 14th Doctor is the Valyards. Now, who wants to start off on their theories on where we're going with this? Because there's plenty here, and there's some tasty ones with some good actual clues with them. Everybody,
I think one thing in terms of this is there's been speculation that the Jinks Monsoon character, Maestro, is effectively the boss of the meep and the one who waits and stuff. That seems too early. So I think the one who waits has to be in the last of in terms of that. So I think that would be something, because we're talking here about a big bad as the thing comes. And just to look back, I did want to mention earlier, in terms of the showrunner stuff, the very fact that it was Bad Wolf in the first one just indicates how much RTD wanted to be Joss Whedon. Because Big Bad came from Buffy and Big Bad Wolf. I mean, that's just ridiculous.
Yeah. So theories, everybody. I mean, I can explain them all, but I don't want to dominate this. But, they've been said by various people. I clearly have said Sutek is my hunch. I've said that the meddling monk might be back, and I've shown lots of reference to that in our earlier trailer. The Ruby Sunday is either dies, she goes into an alternative universe like E-Space or something, the legend of Ruby Sunday. There is that element where, of course, because she stood on a butterfly, changed time. And I think the Doctor will probably stick to that truth that you can't go back and change time again. So basically, how does he save her? And you heard Rachel's theory earlier that she becomes a legend in an alternative universe or something like that. Now, the other version is the Space Baby version, because I actually said, and I was only half joking, that those space babies could be timeless children. It is very, very possible. And she obviously is a bigger myth than just a companion age 19 from Britain. She's clearly bigger. The foundling thing was laboured in the church on Ruby Road.
And the mystical person who leaves her.
Yes, exactly. Therefore, she's obviously bigger than just a normal human. The Mrs. Flood at the end of that episode saying you haven't seen a TARDIS before. There's obviously theories that she is Mrs. Flood, but I don't know about that one. But basically, that's why I'm saying she's possibly a Time Lord, because she has seen a TARDIS before. There's something timey-wimey going on here. Maybe the version that doesn't recognize that TARDIS is the version that's been affected by the... But, I think there's something going on here. And that's why I said this narrative arc, this character arc is quite crucial. I think we're being misled in so many different ways with the Verada see-through and all the rest of it. Millie Gibson's character is vital for the 2 seasons. I'm sure of it. I just think she's, like to say, she's not in all of them. And I don't think it's necessarily about bad stuff. I think the plan is, there's an abrupt juncture, there's an abrupt kind of disconnection, and then there's a reconnection maybe in a different way. But, I'm talking away here in the thread. Does anybody else want to come up with their theories on this one? Because there's loads there.
Well, Brendan, I think that Millie Gibson will be in all of them, because that's probably how she was contracted. I can't see her being hired to do just a couple of episodes. And if she's a companion, she's a companion. So I expect to see her in all of them. Now, Rachel's theories are the ones that have made me think the most.
How
and
dead.
With the and thank you, Rachel. And with the Maestro possibly being the master, I think that is way too extremely obvious, which is why I think that we're being misled a little bit, all in good fun. We'll be surprised. Now, as far as the space babies being timeless children, I think that also is probably too obvious of a conclusion. I hope they're not, but I think that that's another situation where fans are speculating on what may appear to be really obvious, only for us to find out that we were completely wrong.
He did say he would get a character back from decades ago, hence why I went for something like Sutek. We've gone down the fantasy road. We've gone down this God's road. And that's why I think that the Jinks Monsoon Maestro is, like Hugh said, it's like a double bluff, that it's too obvious that it's the master, so therefore is it the master? But I actually think in the end, these are all agents of a greater evil power. All of them. The toy maker, obviously said there was a greater power, the one who waits. You've then got, I think this Jinx Monsoon character, as Hugh said, comes too early on to spoil the narrative arc. And so I think these are all agents of evil, and the great boss clearly will be in the climax at the end. And so to be greater than the toy maker, to be greater than the master, to be greater than all these mortals needs to be a god or an eternal or something. hence why I went for that one. John is going for Omega. How dare you, Time Lords? Brandon will be pleased. He's up for the Time Lords coming back. However they'll look nowadays.
As long as
so-
they're not in cyber armor, I'm all right.
yeah. What about the 14th Doctor being the Valiard? Because, like I said, Rachel, you go for it. You mentioned this. I don't want to keep talking because it's unfair. But that was one of the theories out there, and we discussed this, didn't we?
Yeah, we did. Because obviously I don't know if they will do the Valiard, but it is a possibility. Because obviously David Tennant's Doctor, he's sort of retired, isn't he? And there's theories that he might actually be the Valiard, but we were also theorizing that it's possible that Ncuti may start like experiencing like the craziness of the Valiard as well. Yeah. And then like maybe like bi-regenerate, and then there's like his Valiard, his dark side running around, and he has to like compete off against him or something. But
So Rachel, I presume the thing is with bi-regeneration and the stuff that we're talking about, the Valiard can come back because he's a valid version of the Doctor.
Yeah, and I was ruminating the other day that if the 14th Doctor is broken, and broken, yeah, I'm going to be lazy with my English just for the sake of concision, but a broken character, then we have a possibility that broken character can veer from what they normally act like. And because I keep trying to think, why the hell would you mess with bi-generation unless there's a reason? And RTD, I don't think just concocts things. So it would be, and the Valiard said he was between the 12th and final incarnation of the Doctor. So we're in that territory now. And it would be very interesting. And why would David Tennant come back? Just to do the specials because he's a fan, or to be challenged as an actor where he plays a very different Doctor? Would every Doctor Who actor come back to play the Valiard? I think so.
God, Capaldi would be so awesome. Imagine him being evil and those eyebrows, and they could just say, "Hey, man, we're going to let you take this because you're a fan too. You know what to do with it." You know what I'm saying? Like, I would love for him to be the Valiard. That would be so cool.
I've never seen David Tennant's Doctor, apart from a bit in The Waters of Mars, as a kind of angry character, as in properly angry all the way through. I've seen him shout and that, but Waters of Mars was the most interesting one as a change. If we went down that road, but people are asking, is the Valiard coming back? Just like the Rani and everything. It's a shame Michael Jaston, poor soul. It's a shame because he was such a distinctive voice and character. But would they bring somebody like the Valiard back? But the door is open with a broken Doctor.
I personally just can't see it. It's like you said there. It was between the 12th and the final regeneration, and we passed that. We passed that years ago. I'm just trying to stick with the rules. But then again, it's Doctor. They're always changing their own rules, I suppose. Well, definitely recently. That's how I'm sticking with it. That final incarnation was between Tennant and Smith. That was where it was, and getting good off their rules. We passed that, but I mean, never say never, I suppose. But I'm just trying. I'll play it by their rules, and
it's just that
I think out of all of them, the Sutex really clicks the most. To be honest, I will.
Yeah,
I
think I should have actually put a proper bet on that. But on the Valiard one, I'm just thinking creatively. If I was a writer, if I was an actor, and I really do think there's some credit in doing that because. RTD learned from what he did to Donna Noble. He learned what he did to Harriet Jones. He learned that actually that when you saw that Prime Minister humiliated by what he did at the end of the Christmas invasion, he then, made her a better character in the end. He also realized that the Donna Noble memory erasure, we all hated. And so I think he wanted to jump at the chance to kind of settle that. I can't imagine, why would RTD want to make the David Tennant popular Doctor look like that, you know, doing the weeds? And I can't imagine that's how he wants it to look. There must be another reason.
What about this? It might not work actually now that I think about it, but what about the Guardians?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And I'm trying to remember who said it in the retro doc. Could the Maestro be the Black Guardian? Yeah, very much so.
Oh yeah, I didn't make that connection. I thought she might have been something else, but yeah, like but actually with the Guardian, if Maestro was the Guardian, Black Guardian, would she actually be controlled by a higher power? Is that possible for to happen to a Guardian?
It depends on who's telling the story. Because remember, I said to you guys, we were talking yesterday. I said I had read something in like the magazine comics or something where they were saying like maybe the White and Black Guardian were dispatched by Razalon and the other Matrix Lords or something. I don't know about that, but I'd like to see them again. That would be cool.
Well, plenty of theories. We haven't even mentioned the Susan one, but there's plenty going there. Lots of news going on at the moment. So one of our last headlines, just to keep you happy with where we are, was all the discussion about, and this one is from the Empire magazine, Doctor Who's Beatles episode sprang from an age-old problem with trying to do a Beatles episode, is the headline. And of course, RTD, obviously partly trying to hype up the new series, explains his inspiration for the Devil's Chord. And of course, he said it's all wrapped up in the copyright issues of the Beatles. And so he says, you know, the notion of doing a Beatles episode has always hit a certain stumbling block, but that in itself became a source of inspiration. I knew instantly you can never play Beatles songs on screen because the copyright is too expensive. So I'm thinking, how do you do a Beatles episode without Beatles music? And then it becomes the entire plot. That's where the idea came from. It's all about copyright law. And it came from a conversation that proved to Davies that the legacy of the Beatles still has meaning to younger generations, because he was talking to somebody, So I don't want to kind of just read at people. I don't like doing that. But basically, timescales, you have theories, you have thoughts?
Yeah, well, yeah. This is the first time I've seen that article. I was aware that it existed, but I had not actually read that yet. And when it comes down to it, this has already been done before. It's been done successfully by Big Finish. There is no reason to actually have the original studio recordings of the Beatles to make a Doctor Who story. And I have an example. Big Finish number 178, 1963, Fanfare for the Common Men. This right here was written by Eddie Robson, who is one of the most talented Doctor Who writers ever. If you're not sure who Eddie Robson is, check him out, wiki him, go to Big Finish, type in his name, and you're going to see a huge amount of works in Doctor Who. Now, this particular story, Fanfare for the Common Men, this came out in September of 2013, which was one of Big Finish's contributions to the 50th anniversary of Doctor Who. There were several other stories to go along with these. This right here is one of the highest rated Big Finish stories by all of the ratings and reviews on the timescales, at least. And I have listened to this 3 times. Once I listened to most of it last week because I was really curious about this very topic. How in the world can you have a Doctor Who story about the Beatles without Beatles music? Well, in this case right here, we would have to thank Howard Carter. Howard Carter, and we're looking at the cover to the left here, Fanfare for the Common Men. Howard Carter has also done a tremendous amount of audio work for Big Finish, and he did both the music and the sound design for this. And when listening to it, it's extremely enjoyable because some of the music, in my opinion, might actually be superior to that of Beatles songs. And with the Beatles, there have been tons of cover bands over the years that actually performed live. And a lot of these cover bands will create original new pieces that were not written or ever performed by the Beatles. And for someone attending a concert of a cover band, you might never know. So Doctor Who stories absolutely can be made without original Beatles music. Now, if you look over to the right, introducing the Ruddles, okay, this was a joke on X yesterday, thanks to the talented British author Andy Lane. And there's actually a joke inside of his joke, and let me explain that. The Ruddles are actually a parody band of the Beatles. Their songs they could possibly be considered as covers, but they're also parodies. Now, if you look at the upcoming Doctor Who episode, The Devil's Chord, since the actual Beatles are not in it, in a way, the episode is going to be a parody of the Beatles. So therefore, it would be better to have music, which is also a parody of the Beatles, instead of the original recordings. And for any diehard Beatles fans, everyone's already heard the studio recordings, and they're not going to change because they're static. They're not live. They are what they are. And do we really need to hear an original Beatles studio recording in a Doctor Who episode when there can be other, newer, more creative music put in its place, such as parodies or covers? So the answer may be a little bit complex there, but the original Beatles recordings, the copyrights, and all of the costs that may be involved are absolutely unnecessary because it's been done before successfully.
Thank you for that. I mean, I'm not big on Big Finish, so I'm lost when it comes to that. And obviously, your reference to the joke that came around yesterday. So I thank you for that because I was none the wiser at the time. So you see the point about the showrunner versus producer debate we had earlier, and I was saying sometimes the producers had tight budgets, etc., etc. They had to move to Pebble Mill. They had constraints. And actually, our showrunner RTD is saying this constraint of copyright law, he's actually been inspired by. I'm all for that. Jeremy?
Well, I thought that they had a really big budget. So,
oh yes, but copyright.
but you know, the real challenge is actually to have a Beatles track, even if you only have a short snatch of a Beatles track. And I think that is the challenge. I mean,
yeah.
You know, we've had Beatles music on Doctor Who before with Ticket to Ride, Paperback Writer. I know that in the audios they've had to edit some of it out, or they've had to pay up.
Yeah.
And there's no excuse really for the BBC to say, well, we can't afford it. You know. I think it detracts from the story because people are going to say, well, where's the Beatles music in all this? Even if you had some sort of generic music, Beatles music, from George Martin, for instance, which you could have. But I mean, in this day and age now, it's kind of like, you know, they should come up with a special deal with EMI or whoever owns the rights to Beatles music.
I looked it up yesterday, Jeremy, on when we were doing Culture Council. I believe Sony owns it now. And, you know, would you say, is there any chance that maybe they're swerving us and, you know, maybe there will be a snippet of a song, you know, in there somewhere? I wonder if maybe there, I mean, I don't.
Could very well be. Yeah.
Okay, so to add to that, I was just looking at, just to get some sort of idea as to perhaps what it would actually be. And according to the Telegraph, yesterday, the Beatles film, in order to get some of the copyright, they paid $10 million. $10 million, according to that. And that was 26 million. Their production cost was $26 million.
That's nothing. Mickey spends $10 million on liquor. He could, you know what I'm saying?
True.
He spends $15 million on beer. He could afford the $10 million to help out the BBC. Easy.
Yeah, and then I was looking at something else, and how Michael Jackson bought the publishing rights to the Beatles. It was in excess of $1 billion. And that was as of 2020.
So maybe the Devil's Chord is they play one note of a Beatles song because that's all they can afford.
Just in terms of having something where you're looking at what happens to Beatles music, then obviously there was the film Yesterday,
Yes. Yes.
where the Beatles music had to be reinvented, but they still played some of the stuff, and I don't think that was big budget.
True. True.
No.
Oh, so
Well, as far as the budget, there's
We could also go back to the
also
film when we
a
got
license for use fee.
stuff like Shakespeare as well. Episode about Shakespeare, and it wasn't about a particular play he did. It was more about the play that never happened. It was based off a real thing. And again, with the Agatha Christie thing, you know, the fact that she went missing and Gareth Robertson have exploited that and thought, oh, I'll use that in my script. So, you know, and I could see that about this, and it seems like Russell's done that. I'm not sure if Greg, you said that Beatles might actually not be in it. I thought they were. So I'm not quite sure now, but
they are in
yeah. So you could either way, you could still have the Beatles in it, and you could say like this, you know, Maestro going around or whatever, or, you know, exploit that and delve into that a little bit. You know, a music going missing, historical story, isn't it? So you can do well. Be fairly with what you do.
The thing that sort of disappoints me about this, the thing that sort of disappoints me about it is that it really should be the Rolling Stones, so as they could have Goodbye Ruby Tuesday and go, actually Sunday works better.
Yeah. Yes, I know. There's puns there, aren't there? Oh, it's a shame. So look,
I'd sympathy for the devil. Surely that's something you wanted.
Oh well, we've already had. I've got the devil in me. That was well, no. I must admit, we were saying the other day, weren't we, about he does like to bring music back. And so you wonder what music he is. You know, we've got Spice Up Your Life with the Toymaker, which I never would have joined together. We had Rasputin with the Master. Well, yes, I can see that lump. I never thought I'd have Boney M with the Master, though. I never thought I was going to get that. So, yes, who knows, as they all say.
Can I just say that they did play David Bowie music?
David Bowie, right.
Yes.
For the trailer.
That's right. That's right.
So they must have had to pay some copyright fee for that in itself.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Well, here's the thing about the trailer. The trailer is something that is used temporarily, and there will be no use for. In fact, it won't even make it to DVDs. So they could do a one-time license to use the David Bowie music without any concern for physical media in the future. Yeah. Now, as far as licensing the Beatles songs, if they were to be broadcast on television when this episode comes out, I wouldn't be surprised if there was a snippet of actual, real, original Beatles music in the background. But these episodes are going to be available on physical media probably shortly after their broadcast. And in the past, they have had to change the music that was used for the rights for use for perpetual physical media. So I think that's where it differs with the use of the David Bowie music. I think that was a one-time license thing, as opposed to being something perpetual use of the Beatles property.
It would be amazing when you think of the chase in the 60s. Doctor Who, Dalek Mania, it was a classic 60s moment. The Daleks are down there as a 60s icon, and Doctor Who riding on that. I think there was an element of that. Then you've got the Beatles, and when you got in the chase, that weaving of two British icons together, pop culture icons. And, you know, yes, I would love to get the Beatles back in Doctor Who. I know the characters are there, but a bit of music and Doctor Who, you'd think, yeah, we're hot to trot. This is when Doctor Who's flying. Because, yeah, I can get it. I wasn't around in the 60s when they did that, but I can see how Doctor Who's riding high, the Daleks are riding high, the Beatles are riding high, and they dovetail for a lovely little moment in Doctor Who. I'd love to have that again.
We might get a Ringo or Paul cameo. I guess there's always the chance. You know, it's possible that they're still alive.
Is it Ringo in that drum? You know, the drum with the face that's banging around. I do wonder about that one.
But I mean, you may get, you know, they may say, hey, since they wouldn't let us do it the first time, that it might be a funny, cheeky, probably is what you guys would say, thing to show up for just a couple seconds for a cameo.
Right, so bit of Marmite before we all go home, go to bed, or if you're in America, I don't know what time of day you are now, but I don't know. So
it's almost 5 in the afternoon.
It's almost 2 o'clock in California.
Now, just like Millie Gibson coming up every week, this piece of merchandise either delayed or it's reviewed or whatever. So I'm not going to milk it again, but it's funny when I watch streams, everybody sees it as Marmite. I actually am looking forward to this, and I think, you know, it's got enough on it. I like what they've done with it. It's by the way, if nobody knows, it's the 10th of June. At last, we're going to get it. So seeing this artwork
Finally.
at last, you just start to see. Yeah, I always go too far with my buttons. I get excited. So basically, I mean, I think the surreal quality of the illustrations really will work for the Celestial Toymaker. And I understand there's a lot of argument out there about the animations. I get it, and it's not as simple as me just saying one way or the other. Because I've argued in the past that I'd like them to be a house style. But then again, I've just argued against that by saying I like this surreal quality because the toy maker's very studio bound and very 60s studio bound.
Nearly finished.
Sorry. Oh God. So basically, I'm looking forward to this, and I want to give it a go. And I'm not the first to kind of prejudge and always criticize. To me, it looks all right. Does everybody? Go on, Jeremy.
I think it looks hideous and awful. I have to be honest. The animation is absolutely horrendous, and I'm surprised that they've actually let this go forward. I'm surprised they've actually released it, and I have to agree with Ian Levine that it is diabolically bad. But as I said, you know, they're going to release it. So, but I'm surprised they haven't pulled it.
It's a funny one. I know I said it was Marmite, and I understand. I'm not trying to persuade anyone. I understand what you're saying. It is Marmite, isn't it? It really is. And Retrodoc, the more I see this cover, the more I like the art. I mean, I don't know. Has anyone else, Rachel?
It's a nice steel book. It's a nice.
Sorry, Cinnamon? What did you say?
I was just going to say it's a nice steel book. I mean, it's a different animation style. That's definitely for sure. I'm trying to put it into context.
I'm okay with the presentation too.
You know, it's more 3D. Yeah, it's more of a 3D animation style, isn't it, compared to what we were getting? The previous animations that they've done were all somewhat similar. There's been different teams, but they still looked kind of the same. Whereas this is completely like way off. But I also at the same time, I've seen a lot of people say they absolutely hate this. I'm not really sure myself. I'll be watching it in black and white because I can't watch it in color because that's just me. I like to watch it how it was probably intended. But you know, this is a very, very visual story. And when you listen to the actual audio of the story, it is quite difficult at some points to make it out because you'll hear these grunts of Stephen hopping on different things, and it's very visual. You have to look at it. Yeah. So I'm at the same time, I'm just lucky. I'm glad that we finally get to watch it all because this is one of my favorite stories. I really like this one. It was always such a big one of his era. So the fact that we get to watch it, I'm just happy with that. To be honest.
So as I come to you, Rachel, what I'm interested here is what Cybermat Strike says as well. I'm not sure if it will hit the target audience. Purists won't like it. Younger audiences may not be enamored with it. Now we know what's going on in Doctor Who overall. Look at the Daleks in color, where it was chopped. Some hated the edit. Some hated that music. Is this what they're doing to kind of make the Celestial Toymaker, you know, acceptable, digestible?
What with the animation?
Yeah, because is this like a Daleks in color element here, where they're just trying to make it, as Cybermat Strike said, that they're not going to please the purists, but you know, are they trying to get the younger audiences by doing something like this?
That animation style is so Clone Wars. It's so Star Wars Clone Wars to me. Just looking at the face, you know, that's what it looks like to me.
Yeah,
it's terrible.
They can't strive away from the old, you know, old stuff. I don't even know what I'm trying to say. They can't strive away from like classic Who in a sense. It still has to look old. It still has to look retro, you know, that kind of thing.
Contemporary.
Yeah. It has to fit in with the era that it's come from. So they are limited by that. Obviously, they're doing it in color. Now, that's not a norm that for that era wouldn't be a normal thing, which is why I understand what Cinnamon's saying, that he would have to watch it in black and white, and that's fair enough. But maybe putting on the color versions may entice some younger audiences, because obviously they're not used to black and white. Maybe that's what they're trying to get at. I was going to say something else though.
Go on.
Yeah, all right. So I watched the trailer. Personally, I wasn't too keen on the trailer for it, you know, the animation and all of that. But I made a video on it, but afterwards I began thinking, and I was like, do you know, there's one positive thing about these animations. All of these animations that we're getting are because the stories are lost. And if those children in the 60s, 70s, 80s hadn't have actually recorded it with their little dictaphone or whatever they had, we wouldn't even have this today. I mean, obviously, maybe they would struggle to get it today. So they get the recordings that the children had, some voice actors who are good at doing impersonations, and just bringing it all together so that we, as viewers who never got to watch the 60s to 70s lost stories, actually get a chance to see it. And I think sometimes people forget that a lot of work goes into compiling all of that together, and they're doing it for our benefit. And I think that's an amazing thing to actually do, and I appreciate that.
Well, they're doing it to make money because it's a commercial venture.
Well, true,
right?
True, but it's for everyone, yeah.
But you've got to look at the quality of it, and why anybody who was in charge looked at it and said, "I'm sorry, but this is just not good enough." It is certainly not up to any kind of standard.
Well, it's budgeting. It's budgeting is what it is. BBC America was actually backing the restorations of the missing episodes into animation at some point, and then they quit. Now, I understand Ian Levine's position on this. Belief that the missing episodes should be restored back to being as authentic as possible.
Exactly.
Okay? And this animation is obviously not authentic to the original Celestial Toymaker. Now, with there being budgets, I don't believe that BBC or Disney have gotten into AI restoration of the missing episodes, but he's of the belief that they should stay true to the originals. Okay, I get that, and I understand his contention there. But there is one really positive thing about this at the end of the day. Thanks to some fans out there for recording these audios off of television, Doctor Who is complete 100% in audio form. Now we've got the missing videos, but with the animation, I don't personally care what it looks like myself, because of the fact that the audios still exist. And these missing episodes can be remade in different formats, AI and or animation, at any time in the future. And I think that the technology is getting up there to where it can be done better and better and better. And it may take 10, 20 years, but eventually we may have the Celestial Toymaker back extremely true to its original form, where it actually feels like we are watching it on TV back before it was unfortunately junked. So I'm just happy that we still have all of the audios.
Well, let's end on that positive note. We've given a lot of our time. I thank everybody on the panel, your contributions, your thoughts. It wasn't a straightforward debate. It wasn't a straightforward one at all. It was so complex, so many different ways to go. So thank you for your time. Thank you for your insights. Thank you to the people on the thread. So many people, so many ideas. It's because we love Who. Anyway, good night, everybody.
Bye.
Good night, everyone.
Bye.